clearly about their own ego and act based on the four vows. Even though everyone likes to believe they can solve the most difficult problems through serious thinking, it leads to values that are based on their own ego, resulting in nothing but evil and useless ideas. No matter how hard one thinks, limited people can rarely turn off their subjective way of looking at things. When someone faces a serious problem, they must first set it aside for a while, recall the basics cited in the four vows, and decide free from their ego. This prepares them against serious misjudgments. Recognize the limits of your own wisdom. One tends to try hard to judge every situation with the little wisdom they have, and thus cope with it, which breeds evil, egocentric thoughts against providence and turns into vice in the eyes of outsiders. Such wisdom is dirty, pathetic, and narrow-minded. Not least, it is too dull to allow spontaneous action. If no important idea comes to mind, it is better to ask a wise person for advice. The wise person, who is not personally involved, can judge the case selflessly and openly. Such a judgment is firm and convincing, impressing others, and can be compared to a huge tree nourished by many strong roots. In contrast, a judgment born from limited wisdom is like a lonely tree in the barren teachings of a vast field. A man who is in harmony with his lord, Sagar Kuma, an opponent of thousands, had long given up his life. His heart was in harmony with his lord's. Once, Prince Sakyo, who could not stand the lord, held a secret meeting where it was decided to force Kuma to death by seppuku, causing Lord Matsushige to lose the minister he trusted most. Kuma got wind of this, rented a 3-story tea house on the Takuinu estate, gathered a bunch of ruffians and staged a noisy puppet show. Kuma even operated the puppets himself. The wild drinking party at Prince Sakyo's estate lasted for days and nights. The intention behind this improper behavior was to discredit himself and dishonor his lord so that he could face the planned seppuku with dignity. Be careful with reproaches towards others. Making accusations. It is easy to find the good and evil in another person. Similarly, it is easy to criticize them for their faults. Many people think it is appropriate to openly give advice to others and give up if the advice is not accepted. This benefits no one because others are only exposed to shame and loss of face. Before giving advice to another, one must first determine if the other person is in a suitable state, meaning they have an open mind for instruction. Then become familiar with them so that they trust the advisor. Occasionally, attract the other's attention by addressing their inclinations and other interests. Carefully choose the best time and method. Let the intended instructions sink in casually, without directly lecturing. This can be achieved through occasional letters, farewell visits, or discreet conversations about one's own flaws and mistakes. True instruction lies in allowing the admonition to be swallowed naturally, like a thirsty throat absorbs water. The other person experiences a liberation from their faults after being first encouraged by praising their strengths. Teaching is a difficult task. I know from personal experience that errors, which are usually long-lasting, cannot be corrected through usual means. True greatness and compassion are revealed when the followers of a clan come together in brotherhood, correct each other's weaknesses, and strive to serve their lord in harmony. How can someone achieve this ultimate goal if they only expose others to shame? Suppressing a sneeze in the presence of others is improper. When an unexpected sneeze occurs, rub your forehead with your hand from bottom to top, which is usually enough to suppress the sneeze. If that doesn't work, hide the sneeze from others by licking your lips with your tongue and hiding the sneeze behind your sleeve or hand. The same applies to sneezing. Sneezing and coughing often make you look foolish. There are many other things you must pay attention to in order to behave properly. Be an attentive guest. It is advisable to think about and note down what needs to be done the next day. The Lord would surely study the man he wants to visit the next day carefully, select appropriate greetings and conversation topics, and so on. When accompanying your Lord on a visit or going alone for a conversation, you should think carefully in advance about the host to avoid insults during the visit. This is the way to harmony between people and social courtesy. If someone is invited by a high-ranking man, or a similar dignitary, they cannot be good company if they feel very tense before the visit. The right way is to be sincerely grateful for the occasion and look forward to the upcoming meeting with great joy. In general, one should not make uninvited visits unless absolutely necessary. It is very important for a guest to prepare for a visit by imagining the planned company beforehand. In a drinking party or similar event, it is most important to consider when to excuse yourself and leave. I do not want to see people bored by leaving too late, but also not too early, which could ruin an enjoyable meeting. Usually, too much restraint is inappropriate. If you are invited to a dinner and the host has offered the meal once or twice, it is better to accept the kindness. By swearing never to backbite others on the warrior's path, one also decides to make their military bravery known to all people on earth and be useful to their lord. This means instructing the lord in better clan management after being promoted to advisor. The duties of the son go hand in hand with loyalty to one's own lord. They are naturally meant to work for the good of others, which means striving to make all other men useful followers of their lord. Be prepared for any situation. Military tactics and strategy are determined by capable and incapable men. The former are not only experienced, but also ready to solve every problem in a commendable way at the decisive moment. They are nourished by their unique study of various standards for a multitude of circumstances. These are men who are prepared for any situation. On the other hand, the others do not think about the possibilities in advance. When they solve a problem, it is nothing but a lucky coincidence. Proper conduct with drinking. One cannot be careful enough with their behavior. As I observed at various festivals, most men bend over nothing more than their drinks. If someone drinks when they should, it is allowed. At any other time, they look shameful and clumsy, and their daily mental habits and even their true character are revealed. Be clear that a festival is a public function. Always being alone makes one lonely. A certain elder follower preached extreme frugality in all areas of life. However, an old wisdom says that a too clear stream is avoided by fish. Fish can survive and grow by hiding under water lilies or other underwater plants. Only when a superior overlooks the small flaws of his men can they live in a peaceful spirit. Vitality comes first. When I, Yasabudo, had a poem written on a rectangular card, I spoke about vitality and calligraphy with the following words. Imagine you would write only one word across the entire card, as if you were tearing the card with your brush. Whether your calligraphy is presentable or not depends on your energy. All that is required of a samurai is that he feels full of life energy and not tired or negligent. Effeminate men, as Dr. Matsukuma Mai Nokan is said to have, in medicine, men and women are divided into positive and negative in different ways. Even a man's pulse is different from a woman's. However, in the past 50 years, this difference in pulses has disappeared. With this phenomenal change, I began to treat men's eye diseases like those of women because I could not make a successful prognosis with male patients. Those I treated with men's medicine made it clear that they had lost their male spirit. I kept this fact a secret to myself. So, most men today evidently have a feminine pulse. Only a few men really look masculine, making it easy for true men to surpass others with little effort. Spectators see more than players. Driven by the aversion to injustice. Achieving justice is difficult. Continuously seeking justice based on one's own belief often leads to serious mistakes because the truth lies far beyond the reach of the judiciary and is hard to find unless someone is equipped with the highest wisdom. If someone cannot find the truth themselves, there is still a way to reach it by asking others for advice. Even a man who can never hope to attain the truth can very well analyze someone else's affairs. Just as it is often said by spectators in the game of Go, spectators see more than the game. Although a proverb states, "Always think alone to realize that you are mistaken," a difficult matter can best be handled by asking others for advice. Learning through listening and reading means following the wise thoughts of old men. There is no end to lifelong practice. An acquaintance who is a swordsman expressed his viewpoint in old age as follows. Lifelong practice has its various stages. The untalented will never reach a point where, regardless of the practice they undergo, their skills appear pathetic to both others and themselves. Their abilities are of no use at all. On the next level are the less talented who are not quite useful and are dissatisfied with their poor performance, yet they also recognize the clumsy actions of others. In contrast, the talented ones, whose abilities are usable and who can make every ounce of art their own, are proud of their skills and annoyed by the incomplete abilities of others. Those above the talented deceive with their ignorance. However, other people can still acquire their true abilities. So, a person can normally progress far beyond this stage when practicing any art. Beyond that lies the highest level, where one ascends to the very last sphere of an art. Once there, one realizes in the perpetual awareness of one's own imperfect abilities that there is no end to practicing an art. Thus the master lives their life aware of their imperfection, never satisfied with their skills, not even on their very last day. I do not know how to defeat others, I only know how to conquer myself. Lifelong practice knows no end. Things of great importance should be approached calmly. A rule left by Lord Nao Chige in a writing on a wall reads, "Things of great importance should be approached calmly. Things of little importance should be approached seriously." Matters of great importance should only occur daily in such small numbers that they can be addressed. This rule seems to advise formulating decisions on serious matters in advance and finally making the decision easily when facing the matter. On the other hand, if someone does not make decisions, their resolve can hardly succeed at the decisive moment. I believe that daily practice decisiveness is the prerequisite for the rule. Things of great importance should be approached calmly. A man who never makes a mistake cannot be trusted. Once, at a meeting, the possible promotion of a certain follower was considered. The members unanimously wanted to reject the proposed promotion because of the man's past drinking problem. However, there was something to consider. If a man is never considered again after a past mistake, it stifles talented men at the source. A man who has once failed regrets his mistake, acts henceforth discreetly, and is always ready to be useful to his lord. Therefore, such a man should receive an appropriate promotion. I believe in his reliable service precisely because he has failed once. On the other hand, a man who has never made a mistake is, in my eyes, risky. How to fight in a street battle. A samurai was once forced into a fight but did not take revenge on the opposing side, thereby earning the contempt of those who saw it as a disgrace. To settle matters with an enemy, one must simply thrust into the enemy and be killed. This way, one's own death is free from shame. If someone tends only to think about winning a duel, they miss the right moment to act. People avoid retaliation with the excuse that they are outnumbered and only waste valuable time, until they eventually talk about completely giving up revenge. One should confront their enemies, firmly determined to slaughter one after another, no matter how many thousands of enemies there may be. This enables them to fulfill their desire for revenge, and in most cases, they will themselves be the victor. Listening to others and consulting books. Listening to others and consulting books means preparing for the decisive moment that can come at any time. By practicing Bushido, one should be prepared day and night for everything. Be aware of the always uncertain life and think about which action in what form is appropriate in the decisive moment. Chance plays a role in a duel. The way to preserve oneself from fear and pain in a duel is on a different sheet than the mere question of victory or defeat. The former only requires the determination to never flee before death. If someone is defeated, they should immediately retaliate on the spot to match their enemy. This requires neither brains nor technique. A man of great bravery does not think about the end of a fight. He passionately rushes into the jaws of death, where his true self is revealed in his mindset. Do not think yourself established. A man who thinks he is already established is unwise. A man who is satisfied with fixed opinions he gained through considerable effort has already fallen into a trap. Both men should strive much more first to attain a fundamental attitude towards skills and make lifelong efforts towards the ultimate goal without a moment of self-satisfaction with the little they have discovered. They should always consider their achieved results as unsatisfactory and not good enough, and continue to explore the right path to mastery throughout their lives. The truth lies nowhere else but on this path of striving. Thoughts from my father. Here are a few things my father, Yamamoto Jinoemon, said or did. 1. When someone understands one reason, many more will open before their eyes. 2. A man with an affected smile is ordinary and cowardly. 3. Whether you speak at an official occasion or a casual one, always look the listener directly in the eyes. A polite bow at the beginning is enough. Speaking with downcast eyes is dangerous. 4. It is not safe to sink your own hands into wide sleeves when sitting. 5. Whenever I read a book, whether it was a collection of stories in kana or a classic in Chinese script, my father threw it into the fire. He said, "The court should read." Members of the Nakan family should practice military courage with a wooden sword in hand as a sign of relentless practice. 6. A man who does not lead a fighting group and is without a horse is not a samurai. 7. My father got up early at 4 a.m., took a cold bath, shaved his forehead every morning, had breakfast at sunrise, and went to bed at sunset. Changes in values over the past 30 years. Up until 50 or 60 years ago, a samurai took a bath every morning, shaved his forehead, scented his hair with incense, cut his nails, polished them with pumice stone, and smoothed them with sorrel. He was very careful not to neglect his appearance. He cleaned his weapons and kept them polished and free from rust. Today, this special attention to one's own grooming might seem too affected, but it does not stem from any romantic idea. Ready to die in battle every day, young and old samurai were well groomed because otherwise their dead bodies would surely be despised by the enemy on a battlefield, contrary to their wish to be prepared for everything. Even if this custom seems complicated and time-consuming, it precisely describes what is expected of a samurai. There is nothing special else that requires more effort or time. One remains free from shame as long as one is determined to die at any moment or already considers oneself dead and is seriously committed to both their service and the practice of military virtue. In the past 30 years, many changes have occurred. Whenever young samurai meet, they only talk about other people's financial wealth and loss, their household budget, clothing and sex. Without such topics, they feel tense. If someone chooses a good model in calligraphy and works hard to imitate it, their hand will initially be unsure, but soon make pleasing progress. A follower can also orient themselves towards an outstanding warrior. Although exemplary followers who surpass others in everything are very hard to find nowadays, one can choose various men, each excelling in a different virtue such as manners, bravery, speaking style, good behavior, loyalty and quick decisiveness. Students of all directions tend to imitate the unfinished traits of their teachers instead of emulating their strengths, leading to no fruitful results. This also applies to a follower who chooses a teacher that has good manners but is disloyal and then imitates the unfaithful side of their character instead of their good manners. Discover the strong character traits of other people and follow them. This way, anyone, no matter who they are, can become a good example and teacher. Words of encouragement. When visiting a man who is suffering from misfortune to comfort him, the first word of the visitor is of utmost importance because it reveals their true intentions. A samurai who appears to be despondent and worried in any situation is a failure. He is useless if he's not seriously ready to strive for victory by all means. Therefore, a depressed person must be uplifted. Be friendly to visitors. Be friendly to visitors even when you are busy. Sometimes, someone visits an office at the busiest time and discusses their concerns without seeming to sense the hectic atmosphere. In such cases, where officials often react grumpily and angrily to visitors, the samurai code dictates handling the visitor's affairs calmly and thoughtfully. A dismissive reception of visitors is only fitting for the lowly populace. An old veteran once told me that if someone is focused day and night on surpassing successful samurai and killing strong enemies in war, they can keep their fire of courage alive and prove their bravery free from discouragement. Even in times of peace, one should maintain this attitude. Educate your child. There are certain ways a samurai should educate their child. 1. Build their courage without ever threatening or deceiving them. A heart awakened to fear once will never leave the child until the end of their days. It remains with them as their essential flaw. 2. Foolish parents shy away, making their children fearful of thunderstorms, scared of the dark, and telling them horrible stories. By doing so, they commit unforgivable mistakes in child rearing. A child will lag in development if scolded too much. 3. Do not instill bad habits in the child. 4. Pay attention to their language and behavior. A child raised properly can grow into a useful adult with an ordinary character. It is only natural that children of unhappy married parents will gain nothing from them. Even birds and wild animals are shaped by what they see and hear. Pay attention to your words. A man with weak conviction can easily be swayed by others to their side. During a meeting, you might sometimes hear people shout out, especially when someone is fascinated by another man who carelessly speaks about something he hasn't thought through. A third party will surely interpret such a word as agreement. Therefore, you must always be on guard whenever you meet others. When you express your opinion, you should handle the conversation in a way that prevents yourself from being taken over, and be ready to reject ideas that oppose your own. Even in an insignificant matter, a seemingly overlooked detail can be a trap if you are not always vigilant. Beware of questionable friends. It is wise not to become too friends with a man of questionable character, so that you are not taken over and entangled in his twisted thinking. Years of experience are needed to keep oneself free from such mistakes. Do not be a perfect technician. A proverb fits no one better than the samurai of other clans. Expertise is of lifelong benefit to its owner in our clan, but it only ruins the life of the samurai. A man who perfects an art is a technician, not a samurai. Strive to be called a samurai. Remember that skills can only help a man fulfill his duty if he understands that a special talent poses a danger to the existence of a true samurai. Fear no misfortune. A man who is always prepared for death can surely die a peaceful death. Misfortune is not as terrible as we imagine it to be beforehand, so it is foolish to torment oneself with thoughts of disasters yet to come. Never forget that the worst fate of a follower is still dismissal from service or forced suicide through seppuku. Recognize the true nature of good and evil. The setbacks in a person's life cannot be attributed to their good or evil. The rise and fall of a person lie in the nature of things, while their good and evil depend on earthly judgment by humans. People tend to see the highs and lows of others as consequences of virtue and vice. Look in the mirror. It is advisable to get into the habit of looking in the mirror to arrange your own appearance. After I was instructed at the age of 13 to let a forehead lock grow during my captivity, I withdrew to my house for about a year because my relatives told me that as clever as I looked, I would surely stand out unpleasantly sooner or later. Our Lord cannot tolerate clever faces. When people met me after that year, seeing me constantly improving my appearance in solitary seclusion in front of the mirror, they called me sick and weak. So I knew that my qualifications for follower service were now complete. A man with a clever expression. Others do not trust a man with a clever expression if he does not have a strong spirit within himself. His appearance is not a pleasant sight. A respectful, strict, and calm man is best. Despise calculating cowards. Those who work for selfish gain are cowards. The reason is that a calculating person who constantly weighs gain and loss against each other cannot break free from this thought pattern, which is why he views death as a loss and life as a gain. He hates death, which makes him a coward. Educated people hide character traits like cowardice and greed through cleverness and eloquence, a disguise that only leads others to madness. Desperate battles. Desperate battles, or bushido, mean fighting desperately in the throat of death. Lord Naoij himself commented that dozens of men sometimes find it hard to kill a single samurai in this wild state. One cannot expect a man of ordinary, healthy mind to achieve great things. Only when he brings himself into an almost crazy, desperate state, far beyond reason and self-interest, can he accomplish such feats. Likewise, a man who is once hindered by restraint falls far behind others in practicing Bushido because Bushido requires no special thoughts of loyalty or childlike piety, but only desperate fighting in which loyalty and childlike piety can, of course, spontaneously arise. Whoever observes a master of his art and listens to him and then concludes that he can never match him is a weakling. Whoever does not feel inferior to the master, that is, to another person, and aligns his heart entirely towards mastery, has already set his feet on the path of perfection. Confucius deserved his name when he directed his heart to learning at the age of 15. Years of study followed before he became a wise man. A Buddhist scripture says that when someone is awakened to Buddhism, the teachings of Buddha already live in their mind. Pay attention to your language. The samurai must be prepared for everything to avoid showing the slightest twitch. If you do not pay attention to your language, you might blabber something like, "I am afraid." In such a case, you might say, "I will surely flee, that is terrible," or "it hurts terribly." Neither in sleep nor in a playful conversation should a samurai allow himself to utter such words. If they are heard by an attentive man, he can easily recognize the thoughts at the core of the heart of such a carefree speaker. Therefore, always be on guard. Be decisive. An old proverb says, "Think sharply and decide within 7 breaths." Lord Naochige was heard to say that in 7 out of 10 cases, things executed hesitantly turn out to be wrong. From the samurai, quick action is expected. In everything he undertakes, a confused mind leads to no clear decision. A man without nagging doubts and with a fresh and high spirit can come to a decision within 7 breaths. Be quick-witted and determined when making a decision. Whatever talent one is gifted with, one cannot perform good service if not recognized by others. No one can hate a man who strives to be useful, who loves his service, works hard, and is always ready to work with his companions. Avoid promotion. Avoid promotion while you are young and serving as a useful samurai. When one is still young, it cannot bring fruitful results. No matter how brilliant a young man may naturally be, his ability is not yet mature enough to convince others. Therefore, it is better to gradually rise in rank around the age of 50. Surpass others by listening to their advice. The best way to surpass others is by sincerely letting them criticize your own affairs and asking them for advice. For most people, only their own opinion counts, so you cannot surpass others. A samurai who writes much better than I showed me once an official document he had written to another to seek his advice. The fact that he asked another man to review and correct the writing shows that he was already ahead of the other. Pure and simple, in no exercise can there be a stage where someone thinks they have achieved everything. Such a feeling of perfection stands against the practice of the way. A man who was dissatisfied with his results all his life, though he practiced wholeheartedly until his last breath, retrospectively achieved his goal to become pure and simple and to cultivate concentration. Pursuing more than one goal is a difficult life task. Pursuing a goal will never lead a person on the path unless it is done in a pure and clear mind. Move heaven and earth. Nothing is impossible in this world. A firm decision can move heaven and earth, they say. Some things seem far beyond a person's power because he cannot direct his heart towards a difficult project due to a lack of strong will. It entirely depends on one's mental attitude, even moving heaven and earth without applying one's own strength. Be humble. There are many who want to teach, and only a few who want to listen. Even fewer people stick to the lessons already given. When a man is already in his 30s, no one will dare to admonish him, so he tends to follow his own path and repeats his misdeeds and foolishness. Therefore, you must surround yourself with reasonable people and listen to their teachings. Listen and fear no mistakes. A follower who does not love his duty fulfillment in follower service is commendable. A follower who is afraid of a big assignment and asks to be released from it is evasive and unmanly. If someone fails a mission despite great effort, the failure resembles an honorable death in a desperate battle. Always be humble like in the first meeting. If all people live in a society in harmony and leave their existence to the way of heaven, they will surely live comfortably and in peace. A man who does not live in harmony with others cannot be considered loyal to the Lord. Whatever noble principle he claims for himself, those who stand poorly with others and even avoid irregular meetings or just talk about it will all be determined by their narrow thinking. Even if a man disagrees with another, a warm greeting is expected whenever he meets the other. He should be prepared to arrange with the other so that repeated meetings do not become boring, and always think about a possible moment when a friendly relationship might be urgently needed. In this fleeting world where no one can be sure of their life, it would be embarrassing to die suddenly when others are thinking badly of you. One should not end up as a money-hungry monk or a crazy or extremely despicable and selfish creature. Do not compete unnecessarily with them. Stay polite and humble and handle things thoughtfully for the good of others, because this ensures unfaltering friendly relationships in every meeting as if it were the first time. In my youth, I kept a repentant diary to note my daily mistakes. Not a day passed without me writing down 20-30 errors. Facing this inevitable parade of blunders, I finally gave up the diary. Even now, when I lie in bed thinking about what I did during the day, there are at least a few mistakes that slipped into my words or actions, making me realize what an imperfect person I am. A man who is too taken with his cleverness cannot reflect in this way. Loyalty and childlike piety are shown by a loyal follower. In the samurai's house, doing his son's duty, as a proverb says, one should be thoroughly dutiful to their parents and regret not having done more for them when they have died. Since many followers naturally tend to exhaust themselves in the service of their lords, few care about their son's duty. Loyalty and childlike piety only show up when the lord and parents act unreasonably. When they are reasonable and well-disposed, even a stranger behaves kindly towards them. The monk Gensei secretly went to the fishmonger at sunset and then brought the fish, hidden under his mother's robe. His devotion and loyalty to his parents go far beyond what is usual. About Shudo. Men often make lifelong mistakes because of Shudo, homosexual relationships in their youth. Nowadays, it seems no one tells young men about the obligations of Shudo, without which their integrity is easily jeopardized. Someone in their practice of Shudo is romantically connected to only one male lover in life. Otherwise, he would be no better than his professional sodomite or a prostitute, which is a disgrace for the samurai. Saikak is known for his remark, "A young man without a patron older lover is like a young girl without a fiancé." A fearful man's love is never deeply rooted. He is doomed to abandon his lover later. If such a man approaches you, wisely reject him sharply and explain that he is invoking difficulties. If the other continues to ask what kind of difficulties, then say, "How dare you ask such a question when I am still alive?" If he continues to probe, strike him down angrily with your value. The older must be certain of the faithful heart of the younger lover. His amorous desires will be fulfilled if he strives strongly enough for several years, even at the cost of his life. If you maintain Shudo, never chase after women. Instead, dedicate yourself to training in martial arts, the way of Bushido. Be stubborn. A stubborn attitude suits men under 40 better than intelligence and discretion. Even in their 40s and beyond, a man who hasn't developed a strong will can't influence others despite his character and position. Challenge the enemy impetuously. If you're determined to kill someone, never allow yourself to think, "I might lose if I confront the enemy immediately. Instead, I'll choose a delay tactic." Such thinking robs you of the precise timing and diminishes your original resolve. The way of the samurai demands that you charge headlong into your enemy, even blindly. During Buddhist ceremonies at the Jisuin temple near Kawakami, a drunken page of a high-ranking man started a quarrel with the ferryman on a boat. Upon reaching the shore, the page drew his sword, but was first struck on the head by the boatman's pole. Other boatmen rushed in with oars to beat the page down. The lord, however, turned away and left the scene. Another page ran back, apologized to the boatman, knocked down the unruly page, and brought him back to the lord's residence. That night, it said, the beaten page had his swords taken away. The lord is responsible because he didn't reprimand the rabid page or calm the boatman on the ferry. Then, when the page was struck on the head, soothing words were out of the question. Even if the page had acted unreasonably, under the guise of apologizing, the lord should have killed the boatman with the first blow and the page with the next. The lord was a coward. Do not abuse the dead. When a samurai remarked, "How sad that the son died so young," I replied, "True, he was a valuable man." When that samurai lamented that in these days of decline, social obligations are completely discarded, I consoled him. As a proverb says, when things go utterly wrong, they'll turn for the better. Therefore, this world will undoubtedly improve. After his execution, Nakano Shugen was thoroughly bad-mouthed at a meeting in Commander Okisenobu's group house. Yobu reprimanded the men. "We should not speak ill of the dead. People who have been accused should be pitied. Saying the best we can about the deceased aligns most closely with the samurai's duty of mutual compassion. Only heaven knows if Nakano Shugen won't be rehabilitated as a righteous man in years to come." These precious words suited the old warrior well. Understand others to clarify matters. One should quickly understand others and act accordingly. With a quarrelsome man of strong will, you must yield thoughtfully and win his reason without sounding harsh or leaving room for anger. Mind and words should work together to resolve disputes. The 3 principles of service. The deep foundation of a samurai's service is generally to offer his own life to his lord. The samurai must first cultivate wisdom, kindness, and courage within himself. To a layperson, it might seem impossible to possess these 3 virtues together, but it's easy. Wisdom, immeasurably rich wisdom, can be attained by asking others for advice. Kindness arises from working for the benefit of others, thinking more of them than of yourself. Courage means baring your teeth and crushing adverse circumstances underfoot without cleverly overthinking the consequences. I know no better advice than this. All in all, service isn't difficult. Anyone who wants to be considered at least a little useful should think only of these 3 principles. Passionate devotion. There's nothing more important than passionate devotion in a given moment. Life consists of this flame that reignites over and over. The mind of a man awakened to this truth won't be burdened by pressing concerns or desires. He must align his life solely with passionate devotion. Yet, no one is able to fully realize this truth. Everyone keeps searching for other seemingly important things in life, consistently showing passionate devotion and eventually being freed from delusion takes many years. Once awakened, you don't always have to consciously think about focused effort. Passionate devotion in every moment, once truly realized, allows a man to stand calmly above daily confusion over trivial matters. Rationality is contained within this passionate devotion. The trend of the times. The trend of the times cannot be changed. Society becomes increasingly corrupt and approaches downfall. Just as a year encompasses different seasons, not just spring and summer, the same applies to a day that changes its face every moment. Any attempt to make present society like it was 100 years ago must fail. We should seek to continually improve ourselves in line with the ever-changing course of time. People who only nostalgically look to the past are wrong because they miss this crucial point. On the other hand, those who overly value current fashions and neglect old customs are superstitious and unreasonable. Don't hesitate to ask the Lord for financial help. During my past service, I wasn't troubled by thoughts of my strained finances. If my family were without food, I thought, I could ask the Lord's entourage or the Lord himself for money. Years ago, when I had to depart for Kyoto to take up my official duties, I asked the elder council members for financial support. My household finances are severely strained due to my upcoming long stay in Kyoto. I would greatly appreciate considerate handling of this, for if my debt remained unpaid, it would tarnish the venerable name of our clan. The debts don't stem from my selfishness. They're caused by my official stay in Kyoto. The council members reported this to the Lord, who generously granted me a sum. Whoever has completely entrusted everything to the Lord need not worry about his own affairs. Thoughtlessly expressing reservations, on the other hand, complicates matters. Don't let yourself be struck down from behind. In a certain battle, things looked bad for Lord Ieyasu's army. Later, people supposedly spoke with admiration of his retreat. Ieyasu is a great commander of invaluable courage. Not one of his samurai who fell in the unequal battle was found with his back turned to the enemy. The mental attitude of these samurai was evident even after their death. This makes our present attitude seem shameful by comparison. Love in its highest form. The highest form of love is to keep your burning love to yourself and not even open your heart to the beloved person. Receive my consuming love for you from the smoke rising before my burning body when my life is over. Love that's revealed to a beloved while still alive isn't deep. Dying with concealed love is the highest form of love. Even if asked by the one you love whether this is the case, it's crucial to answer immediately. That's the last thing I can imagine. What a complicated path true love must take. When I discussed this recently, some men agreed with me, and we were called the Smoke Group. This philosophy of love applies to everything. It illustrates, for example, the relationship between lord and retainer. As long as someone doesn't refrain from shameful actions in solitude or secretly dwelling on base thoughts, he cannot appear pure and clear in public. Every moment is crucial. The present moment might well be the decisive one. The critical moment could be right now. People who see moments as separate things can't be ready in times of emergency. If a man were called to his Lord right now and asked to express his thoughts on a particular matter, he'd most likely not have a prompt answer. This shows that the attitude toward crucial moments differs from that toward ordinary times. Viewing these different moments as one and the same requires daily practice, even in leisure time, so you can explain things clearly when summoned before the shogun, the feudal lord, or elder council members. Even if you're certain your low rank will never grant you the opportunity to speak in the Lord's presence. This attitude applies to everything. Whether you're on the battlefield or in civil service, be accordingly prudent. If we analyze this deeply, we must recognize how constantly inattentive we are. Be prepared for death. Rich and poor, young and old, awakened and deluded, all must die. Death comes to each of us, and even if a person knows this truth, he convinces himself that he is the last one who must die after all others have encountered this inevitable fate. No one harbors a thought of the approaching death that can knock on his door at any moment. How short-sighted to think that if there is any secret formula for dealing with certain death, it lies in the notion that nothing one does can avoid death, that one's own life is nothing but an empty dream. Never be inattentive towards the shadow of death that skulks densely around your feet. Encouragement is better than sympathy. When thoughtless words of pity like, "I'm sorry to hear that," are spoken to someone who has lost his presence of mind due to an unexpected misfortune, the suffering person only becomes more depressed and unable to think reasonably. In such a case, it is better to distract the other's attention by comforting him. "You are lucky. It could have been worse," or similar words, as if nothing bad had happened. If he clings to such encouragement, the suffering person can surely recover and see things again in a reasonable light. In this uncertain world, one must harbor long-lasting worry or joy. How to settle a dispute. Before negotiating a matter at a conference, the chairman should first discuss the case in detail with the person directly involved. Then listen to the opinions of others present at the conference and make a decision. Otherwise, someone else might get hurt. It is also advisable, in matters that require serious consultation, to privately ask for comments from those who are not involved or who stand outside the ordinary mass, as they can analyze them reasonably, being unbiased towards the matter. Members of one's own group tend to take sides in favor of their own men upon request. Their comments are then naturally of no use. Gods and impurity. They say of gods that they hate impurity, yet I do not pray to them daily without self-interest. I was long devout towards them and prayed for my luck on the battlefield, where I was supposed to fight, rising over blood-stained and road dead bodies. If the gods now look away because they despise my impurity, I must accept what comes. With this fate, I bow to the gods whether I am pure or not. The short life of my husband. The life of my husband is only a fleeting moment. A man should spend his life doing what he truly wants. In this short life, it would be idiotic for a man to force himself into something he does not like and thus spend his existence suffering. If this thought is, of course, misinterpreted, it is harmful. Therefore, I kept it to myself and never told young men. I like my naps. I think about them stylishly, and according to my current circumstances, I only want to stay in the house and enjoy sleeping. Appearance. The appearance of a person shows his dignity and is an expression of the depth of his character. His concentrated effort, cheerful attitude, silent pose, polite disposition, posture, gritted teeth, and piercing gaze. All this shows that such an external appearance stems from constant attention and seriousness. A man of low birth in a high position. A man of lower origin who now holds an important position previously gave cause for promotion. His virtue was worthy of his rise. If others do not want to work with a person of simple origin or feel embarrassed serving under a man who was only a foot soldier until recently, they are unforgivably misguided. If the man of low birth, who has attained a noble position, is endowed with more virtue than the one who was already born into that status, The former must be respected more strongly. Respectful distance. A samurai must consider that the lord, ministers, and older council members must keep a respectful distance from him so that he can undertake something great. If these people completely loosen up in his presence and allow themselves to become, it will be difficult for him to carry out a great endeavor. Personal favoritism through the superior via relationships damages character. A man who is supported by personal relationships and favors cannot express his own opinion. Despite his years of hard-fought service, people will contemptuously say that he enjoyed special privileges because of his personal bond with the superior. This calls his entire service into question. Keep your mouth shut. Be careful not to make remarks that provoke resistance in connection with current matters. When there are complications, people tend to get excited and unconsciously talk about nothing else. Visiting someone. Before visiting someone for a small chat, you should inform the other about the planned visit. Otherwise, you might find the host worried and facing unusual difficulties, which would ruin the pleasure of the visit. In general, it is better to visit someone only if you are invited. Even if you are invited, a visit to a depressing and unpleasant meeting can end too often, allowing random meetings to have no calm conversations from heart to heart. Even from meetings for passing time, mistakes often arise, but even if you are affected by misfortune and worry, you should not neglect to receive visitors. Do not be speechless. If someone, whether drunk or simply talking nonsense, makes a rude remark in your presence that you cannot ignore, it is advisable to respond with a few words to clean up the situation. A man whose spirit quickly burns into anger is too impatient to immediately counter with an appropriate remark, feels cornered, and draws his sword. Always staying silent is cowardly. The effect of appropriate words that must be uttered on the spot must be well considered in one's own mind. Selfish desires in protest. Shogun said, selfish desires are included in the word kan, meaning open protest against the Lord. Such protest should not be raised in follower service. No one knows if he ever admonished his Lord, nor did he ever really convince his Lord through pure logic. He always influenced his Lord in silence. The old grandfather of Kasumar never requested an audience to register protest against his Lord. Usually, he seized a favorable opportunity to advise the Lord privately, where his words were gladly accepted because no one knew. The Lord's mistakes never surfaced. When one's own counsel is private, it does not count towards the Lord's approval. The follower must seriously destroy his brain to gain the Lord's approval through other objective paths. Then, he will surely become tied to repeated advice and, with his misdeeds, to the follower's path, to stand stronger to protect the Lord's mistakes from becoming known in public. Don't fail through life. Everyone fails sometimes due to impatience in a great undertaking. Always think that the time is not yet come, and you can see how your burning desires materialize much earlier than expected. That is, in due time. Imagine how things will look in 15 years. The world may have been drastically changed. In this gradually deteriorating world, people lose their abilities over time, and silver is replaced by gold as treasure. When gold reserves are exhausted, or copper replaces silver when all silver is gone, relentless effort from this moment can make someone a useful man in 15 years. What is nothing but a fleeting moment in a dream, as long as someone carefully attends to his health, he may perhaps see his long-held dream of service as a useful follower to the Lord come true. If the world is full of outstanding men, it is hard to surpass others. During an era in which everything decays, it is much easier to be someone significant. The story of my life. I was born when my father was already 70 years old. He always said it wouldn't bother him to sell me to a salt merchant or someone else as takuso. He heard my father, Lord Katsuig, always tells me that you even practice in your follower service when you are not being watched by others. Your loyal service will surely appear useful to your descendants to the Lord. Then he called me Matsukame, after which Hideyoshi Risemon kindly appointed Hakamatu Keretusam to me. At the age of 9, I was called as a young man to Lord with Kuzushige and assigned the name Fu. When I also served Prince Tsunashige, I liked jumping onto his fire pit with a blanket, letting myself be carried on his back and causing all sorts of nonsense. In everyone's eyes, I was a real rascal. When I became 13, Lord Mitakusige ordered the initiation rite for me. After a year of self-imposed restriction in my house, I reported myself on May 1st of the following year as a squire under the new name Ichiu. Humiliated by those who looked down on me as a samurai of low rank, I tried since day and night to find out how I could best strive in my service. At that time, I visited the residence of Godoemon to listen to his speeches every night. One night he said, "The old men claim that those attracted by fame and wealth are not followers, nor are those who are not attracted to them, but no one would seriously think." When I looked hard after Da's effort, I suddenly saw my path open before me. Sun's instruction taught me that the highest service of a follower is always to speak before the Lord for the protection of the clan and to win a ministerial post for this purpose instead of remaining low in the hierarchy. Convinced that one should seek progress not for personal fame and wealth, but for the benefit of one's highest service, I decided to become a minister. A man who was promoted to a high post in his youth later always proved ineffective, so I worked day and night and finally settled in my 50s, shedding yellow tears, if not blood tears. Despite my deep efforts, I died. The Lord, before I had held the post of minister, those who had already been promoted to the highest ranks dishonored his name, after which I was called what I am now. While on one hand, I could not fulfill my greatest wish to serve as a minister, on the other hand, my years of hard effort towards the goal were comparable to the final fulfillment. It is true, if a man sets a goal, he can achieve it. Those who took care of the deceased lord and who were punished after his death had caused the punishment themselves because they acted out of self-deception. Even if the story of my life sounds paradoxical, unfathomable fate has guided me through my life. I reveal it to you today in the silence of the mountain. Envious followers. Once there was a newcomer among those who stood close to Lord Nao Shig, who was particularly favored. Older followers asked for an audience with the Lord. They said to him, "Lord, it seems that you particularly care for the son whom we did not see on the battlefield and heard nothing about his usefulness. Could you tell us the reasons why this man is in your service and why he is favored by you?" "You are right," explained the Lord. "This man is not useful in times of battle, but I have taken a liking to him. I feel reassured when I assign him to lowly tasks. I cannot ask experienced followers like you to perform such lowly tasks. I depend on you in times of war." A brave follower who became a bandit. The impoverished Saitono Suk one day had no money left for rice, which his wife lamented. Upon hearing her concern, Jonuk left the house with his swords in hand and said, "Although you are a woman, you have a limited mind. You lose your heart over something trivial like the desire for rice. There is rice everywhere for us. Just wait a little." Then he looked down the street and saw farmers with their horses carrying rice on their backs. Jonosuke asked where the farmers were going, and they replied that they were on their way to the fair at the castle. "In this case," Jonosuke said, "bring everything along here and leave it in my house. I, Saito Jonosuke, need rice for the officials here and there. Carrying this heavy load of rice to go here and there must be very arduous for you. Leave the rice with me and show my receipt to the village chief." His words could not convince the farmers, and they left angrily. Jonosuke drew his sword and ordered them to stop. Thus the farmers were forced to carry the rice into his house and return home with his receipt. Jonosuke showed the rice to his wife and boasted, "Here are mountains of rice. Take as much as you want." This incident soon became known. Yonosuke reported it just as it had transpired to the officials who investigated the case. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. Lord Katsushige ordered an aide to inform his retired father, Lord Naosuke, of the evidence of Yonosuke's guilt. Upon hearing this news, the retired lord addressed the aide without a word to his wife. "You have just heard that Yonosuke is to be executed. How regrettable." He defended the province of Season in bloody battles like a wild man, risking his life. That was more valuable than all of Japan and all of China combined. He was one of the few whose superior service enabled our comfortable and peaceful lives as Lord and Lord's wife. Yonosuke is a man of incomparable bravery who distinguished himself multiple times on the battlefield. I have driven him into this wretched existence in which he sometimes had nothing to eat. How could I survive myself if such a follower were to be killed? The couple mourned Yonosuke's fate with tears of resentment in their eyes. Surprised, the aide hastily withdrew and informed Lord Katsushige of Lord Naosuge's grief as he had experienced it. "How kind you are," said the impressed Lord Katsushige. "I have long sought a way to atone for my son's guilt. How could I let Yonosuke be killed and thereby torment my parents, who hold him in such high esteem? Hurry and inform them that he will be pardoned." Upon hearing this, Lord Naosuke folded his hands in prayer and bowed before the main citadel. "He is my own son, and I am so grateful to him for his consideration. Nothing brings me more joy than this news." An aggressive spirit like Prince Akin. Lord Naosuke, due to an official matter at the Third Citadel, had to realize that the Lord was not there, and no one knew where he was. Even during the second summons the next day, the Lord remained missing. After a thorough search of the castle grounds, the Lord was finally found on the lookout tower. The prince immediately climbed up and asked the Lord what he was doing there. Lord Naosuke replied, "For a few days I have been observing the public morals of our clan." Further, he explained, what this means is observing and analyzing passers-by on the street. Unfortunately, the soldiers' morale of the province Shizen has been weakening lately. A man in your position must remember what I say. Most passers-by look down because their spirits have become friendly. Without a violent spirit, however, a samurai's assault cannot have any power. From a man with an unbending heart, who always considers everything sincerely and honestly, one cannot expect him to fulfill male duties. Sometimes one must boast and keep one's spirit aggressive and carefree to become a samurai. Hence, it is said that Prince Akinokami, who withdrew his oath to die, Kuranojo, the unrivaled master in sword fighting, served Lord Naosuke and was blessed by his extraordinary affection. Lord Kuranojo offered his written oath to follow him to the other world through seppuku upon his death. Later, Kuranojo got into a legal dispute with a farmer who was tried before the clan's council, whom he held responsible for sufficient reasons. Fuming with anger, Kuranojo turned to his lord. "How can a samurai who is sacrificed for a farmer follow his lord to the underworld through seppuku? Please release me from my oath." Lord Naosuke sighed. "In a legal dispute, one wins and the other loses. You are well versed in martial arts but know little about the world. How regrettable." Then he handed him back the written oath. "Be constant."
Match found. Move or get zapped.
The Pilgrimage, a contemporary quest for ancient wisdom by Paulo Coelho. Prologue. And now, before the sacred countenance of Ram, you must touch with your hands the word of life and acquire such power as you need to become a witness to that word throughout the world. The master raised high my new sword, still sheathed in its scabbard. The flames of the bonfire crackled, a good omen, indicating that the ritual should continue. I knelt and, with my bare hands, began to dig into the earth. It was the night of January 2nd, 1986, and we were in Itatiaia, high on one of the peaks in the Serra do Mar, close to the formation known as the Agulhas Negras, Black Needles, in Brazil. My master and I were accompanied by my wife, one of my disciples, a local guide, and a representative of the great fraternity that is comprised of esoteric orders from all over the world, the fraternity known as the Tradition. The five of us, and the guide, who had been told what was to happen, were participating in my ordination as a master of the Order of Ram. I finished digging a smooth, elongated hole in the dirt. With great solemnity, I placed my hands on the earth and spoke the ritual words. My wife drew near and handed me the sword I had used for more than 10 years. It had been a great help to me during hundreds of magical operations. I placed it in the hole I had dug, covered it with dirt, and smoothed the surface. As I did so, I thought of the many tests I had endured, of all I had learned, and of the strange phenomena I had been able to invoke simply because I had had that ancient and friendly sword with me. Now it was to be devoured by the earth, the iron of its blade and the wood of its hilt returning to nourish the source from which its power had come. The master approached me and placed my new sword on the earth that now covered the grave of my ancient one. All of us spread our arms wide, and the master, invoking his power, created a strange light that surrounded us. It did not illuminate, but it was clearly visible, and it caused the figures of those who were there to take on a color that was different from the yellowish tinge cast by the fire. Then, drawing his own sword, he touched it to my shoulders and my forehead as he said, "By the power and the love of Ram, I anoint you master and knight of the order, now and for all the days of your life. R for rigor, A for adoration, and M for mercy. R for regnum, A for Agnes, and M for Mundi. Let not your sword remain for long in its scabbard, lest it rust. And when you draw your sword, it must never be replaced without having performed an act of goodness, opened a new path, or tasted the blood of an enemy." With the point of his sword, he lightly cut my forehead. From then on, I was no longer required to remain silent. No longer did I have to hide my capabilities nor maintain secrecy regarding the marvels I had learned to accomplish on the road of the Tradition. From that moment on, I was a magus. I reached out to take my new sword of indestructible steel and wood, with its black and red hilt and black scabbard. But as my hands touched the scabbard and as I prepared to pick it up, the master came forward and stepped on my fingers with all his might. I screamed and let go of the sword. I looked at him, astonished. The strange light had disappeared, and his face had taken on a phantasmagoric appearance, heightened by the flames of the bonfire. He returned my gaze coldly, called to my wife, and gave her the sword, speaking a few words that I could not hear. Turning to me, he said, "Take away your hand. It had deceived you. The road of the Tradition is not for the chosen few. It is everyone's road. And the power that you think you have is worthless, because it is a power that is shared by all. You should have refused the sword. If you had done so, it would have been given to you because you would have shown that your heart was pure. But just as I feared, at the supreme moment you stumbled and fell. Because of your avidity, you will now have to seek again for your sword. And because of your pride, you will have to seek it among simple people. Because of your fascination with miracles, you will have to struggle to recapture what was about to be given to you so generously." The world seemed to fall away from me. I knelt there unable to think about anything. Once I had returned my old sword to the earth, I could not retrieve it. And since the new one had not been given to me, I now had to begin my quest for it all over again, powerless and defenseless. On the day of my celestial ordination, my master's violence had brought me back to earth. The guide smothered the fire, and my wife helped me up. She had my new sword in her hands, but according to the rules of the Tradition, I could not touch it without permission from my master. We descended through the forest in silence, following the guide's lantern, until we reached the narrow dirt road where the cars were parked. Nobody said goodbye. My wife put the sword in the trunk of the car and started the engine. We were quiet for a long time as she carefully navigated around the bumps and holes in the road. "Don't worry," she said, trying to encourage me. "I'm sure you'll get it back." I asked her what the master had said to her. He said 3 things to me. First, that he should have brought along something warm to wear, because it was much colder up there than he had expected. Second, that he wasn't surprised at anything that had happened up there, that this has happened many times before with others who have reached the same point as you. And third, that your sword would be waiting for you at the right time, on the right day, at some point on the road that you will have to travel. I don't know either the day or the time. He only told me where I should hide it. And what road was he talking about? I asked nervously. Well, that he didn't explain very well. He just said that you should look on the map of Spain for a medieval route known as the Strange Road to Santiago. The road to Santiago. Arrival. The customs agent spent more time than usual examining the sword that my wife had brought into the country, and then asked what we intended to do with it. I said that a friend of ours was going to assess its value so that we could sell it at auction. This lie worked. The agent gave us a declaration stating that we had entered the country with the sword at the Bajadas airport, and he told us that if we had any problems trying to leave the country with it, we need only show the declaration to the customs officials. We went to the car rental agency and confirmed our 2 vehicles. Armed with the rental documents, we had a bite together at the airport restaurant prior to going our separate ways. We had spent a sleepless night on the plane, the result of both a fear of flying and a sense of apprehension about what was going to happen once we arrived. But now we were excited and wide awake. "Not to worry," she said for the 1000th time. "You're supposed to go to France and, at Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, seek out Madame Lourdes. She is going to put you in touch with someone who will guide you along the road to Santiago." "And what about you?" I asked, also for the 1000th time, knowing what her answer would be. "I'm going where I have to go, and there I'll leave what has been entrusted to me. Afterward, I'll spend a few days in Madrid and then return to Brazil. I can take care of things back there as well as you would." "I know you can," I answered, wanting to avoid the subject. I felt an enormous anxiety about the business matters I had left behind in Brazil. I had learned all I needed to know about the road to Santiago in the 15 days following the incident in the Agulhas Negras, but I had vacillated for another 7 months before deciding to leave everything behind and make the trip. I had put it off until one morning when my wife had said that the time was drawing near and that if I did not make a decision, I might as well forget about the road of the tradition and the order of Ram. I had tried to explain to her that my master had assigned me an impossible task, that I couldn't simply shrug off my livelihood. She had smiled and said that my excuse was dumb, that during the entire 7 months I had done nothing but ask myself night and day whether or not I should go. And with the most casual of gestures, she had held out the 2 airline tickets, with the flight already scheduled. "We're here because of your decision," I said glumly now in the airport restaurant. "I don't know if this will even work, since I let another person make the decision for me to seek out my sword. My wife said that if we were going to start talking nonsense, we had better say goodbye and go our separate ways. You have never in your life let another person make an important decision for you. Let's go. It's getting late." She rose, picked up her suitcase, and headed for the parking lot. I didn't stop her. I stayed seated, observing the casual way in which she carried my sword. At any moment it seemed that it could slip from under her arm. She stopped suddenly, came back to the table, and kissed me desperately. She looked at me for some time without saying a word. This suddenly made me realize that now I was actually in Spain and that there was no going back. In spite of the knowledge that there were many ways in which I could fail, I had taken the first step. I hugged her passionately, trying to convey all the love I felt for her at that moment. And while she was still in my arms, I prayed to everything and everyone I believed in, imploring that I be given the strength to return to her with the sword. "That was a beautiful sword, wasn't it?" said a woman's voice from the next table, after my wife had left. "Don't worry," a man said. "I'll buy one just like it for you. The tourist shops here in Spain have thousands of them." After I had driven for an hour or so, I began to feel the fatigue accumulated from the night before. The August heat was so powerful that even on the open highway, the car began to overheat. I decided to stop in a small town identified by the road signs as Monumento Nacional. As I climbed the steep road that led to it, I began to review all that I had learned about the road to Santiago. Just as the Muslim tradition requires that all members of the faith, at least once in their life, make the same pilgrimage that Muhammad made from Mecca to Medina, so Christians in the first millennium considered 3 routes to be sacred. Each of them offered a series of blessings and indulgences to those who traveled its length. The first led to the tomb of St. Peter in Rome. Its travelers, who were called wanderers, took the cross as their symbol. The second led to the Holy Sepulchre of Christ in Jerusalem. Those who took this road were called palmists, since they had as their symbol the palm branches with which Jesus was greeted when he entered that city. There was a third road, which led to the mortal remains of the apostle, Santiago. St. James in English, Jacques in French, Giacomo in Italian, Jacob in Latin. He was buried at a place on the Iberian Peninsula where, one night, a shepherd had seen a brilliant star above a field. The legend says that not only Santiago but also the Virgin Mary went there shortly after the death of Christ, carrying the word of the evangelist and exhorting the people to convert. The site came to be known as Compostela, the Star Field, and there a city had arisen that drew travelers from every part of the Christian world. These travelers were called pilgrims, and their symbol was the scallop shell. At the height of its fame during the 14th century, the Milky Way, another name for the third road, since at night the pilgrims plotted their course using this galaxy, was traveled each year by more than 1 million people from every corner of Europe. Even today, mystics, devotees, and researchers traverse on foot the 700 kilometers that separate the French city of Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port from the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela in Spain. 1. Thanks to the French priest Emeric Picard, who walked to Compostela in 1123, the route followed by the pilgrims today is exactly the same as the medieval path taken by Charlemagne, Saint Francis of Assisi, Isabella of Castile, and, most recently, by Pope John XXIII. Picard wrote 5 books about his experience. They were presented as the work of Pope Calixtus II, a devotee of Santiago, and they were later known as the Codex Calixtinus. In Book 5 of the Codex, Picard identified the natural features, fountains, hospitals, shelters, and cities found along the road. A special society, Les Amis de Saint-Jacques, was then formed with the charge of maintaining all of the natural markings on the route and helping to guide the pilgrims, using Picard's annotations. Also in the 12th century, Spain began to capitalize on the legend of Santiago as the country fought against the Moors who had invaded the peninsula. Several militant religious orders were established along the road to Santiago, and the apostles' ashes became a powerful symbol in the fight against the Muslims. The Muslims, in turn, claimed that they had with them one of Muhammad's arms and took that as their guiding symbol. By the time Spain had regained control of the country, the militant orders had become so strong that they posed a threat to the nobility, and the Catholic kings had to intervene directly to prevent the orders from mounting an insurgency. As a result, the road to Santiago was gradually forgotten, and were it not for sporadic artistic manifestations, in paintings such as Buñuel's The Milky Way and Juan Manuel Serrat's Wanderer, no one today would remember that millions of the people who would one day settle the New World had passed along that route. The town that I reached by car was completely deserted. After searching on foot for quite some time, I finally found a small bar open for business in an old, medieval-style house. The owner, who did not even look up from the television program he was watching, advised me that it was siesta time and suggested that I must be crazy to be out walking in such heat. I asked for a soft drink and tried to watch television, but I was unable to concentrate. All I could think of was that in 2 days I was going to relive, here in the latter part of the 20th century, something of the great human adventure that had brought Ulysses from Troy, that had been a part of Don Quixote's experience, that had led Dante and Orpheus into hell, and that had directed Columbus to the Americas. The adventure of traveling toward the unknown. By the time I returned to my car, I was a bit calmer. Even if I were not able to find my sword, the pilgrimage along the road to Santiago was going to help me to find myself. Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. A parade of masked people accompanied by a band, all of them dressed in red, green, and white, the colors of the French Basque region, filled the main street of Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. It was Sunday. I had spent the last 2 days driving, and now I was enjoying the festivities. But it was time for my meeting with Madame Lourdes. Forcing my way through the crowd by car, I heard some shouted insults in French, but I finally made it through to the fortified sector that constituted the oldest part of the city, where Madame Lourdes lived. Even this high in the Pyrenees, it was hot during the day, and I was soaked with perspiration as I got out of the car. I knocked at the gate. I knocked again, but there was no response. The third time, and still nothing happened. I felt confused and worried. My wife had said that I had to arrive there exactly on that day, but no one answered when I called out. I thought that perhaps Madame Lourdes had gone out to watch the parade, but it was also possible that I had arrived too late and that she had decided not to meet with me. My journey along the road to Santiago seemed to have ended even before it had begun. Suddenly, the gate opened, and a child jumped through it. I was startled, and in halting French I asked for Madame Lourdes. The child smiled at me and pointed toward the house. It was only then that I saw my mistake. The gate led onto an immense courtyard, around which were situated medieval houses with balconies. The gate had been open, and I hadn't even thought to try its handle. I ran across the courtyard and up to the house that the child had indicated. Inside, an elderly, obese woman yelled something in Basque at a small boy with sad brown eyes. I waited for a few moments, giving the argument a chance to end. It finally did, with the poor boy being sent to the kitchen under a hail of insults from the old woman. It was only then that she turned to me and, without even asking what it was that I wanted, led me, with delicate gestures and slight shoves, to the second floor of the small house. This floor consisted of just one room. A small, crowded office filled with books, objects, statues of Santiago, and memorabilia from the road. She took a book from its shelf and sat down behind the only table in the room, leaving me standing. "You must be another pilgrim to Santiago," she said without preamble. "I need to enter your name in the register of those who walk the road." I gave her my name, and she wanted to know if I had brought the scallops. She was referring to the shells adopted as a symbol by pilgrims to the tomb of the apostle. They served as a means of identification for the pilgrims when they met. 1. Before leaving for Spain, I had made a pilgrimage to a place in Brazil called Aparecida do Norte. There, I had purchased an image of Our Lady of the Visitation, mounted on 3 scallop shells. I took it from my knapsack and offered it to Madame Lourdes. "Pretty but not very practical," she said, handing it back to me. "It could break during your pilgrimage." "It's not going to break, and I am going to leave it at the tomb of the apostle." Madame Lourdes appeared not to have much time for me. She gave me a small card that would help me to get lodging at the monasteries along the road, stamped it with the seal of Saint Jean Pied de Port to indicate that I had started the pilgrimage there, and said that I could leave with God's blessing. "But where is my guide?" I asked. "What guide?" she answered, a bit surprised but also with a gleam in her eye. I realized that I had forgotten something very important. In my eagerness to arrive and be attended to, I had neglected to say the ancient word, a kind of password that identifies those who belong to the orders of the tradition. I immediately corrected my mistake and said the word to her. In response, Madame Lourdes quickly snatched from my hands the card she had given me a few moments earlier. "You won't be needing this," she said, as she moved a pile of old newspapers that were sitting on top of a cardboard box. "Your road and your stopping places will depend on decisions made by your guide." Madame Lourdes took a hat and a cape from the box. They seemed to be very old but well preserved. She asked me to stand in the middle of the room, and she began silently to pray. Then she placed the cape on my shoulders and the hat on my head. I could see that scallop shells had been sewn onto both the hat and the shoulders of the cape. Without interrupting her prayers, the old woman seized a shepherd's crook from the corner of the room and made me take it in my right hand. A small water gourd hung from the crook. There I stood, dressed in Bermuda shorts and a t-shirt that read, "I love New York," covered by the medieval garb of the pilgrims to Compostela. The old woman approached me and stopped only a foot away. Then, in a kind of trance, placing the palms of her hands on my head, she said, "May the Apostle Santiago be with you, and may he show you the only thing that you need to discover. May you walk neither too slowly nor too fast, but always according to the laws and the requirements of the road. May you obey the one who is your guide, even though he may issue an order that is homicidal, blasphemous, or senseless. You must swear total obedience to your guide." I so swore. "The spirit of the ancient pilgrims of the tradition must be with you during your journey. The hat will protect you from the sun and from evil thoughts. The cape will protect you from the rain and from evil words. The gourd will protect you from enemies and from evil deeds. May the blessing of God, of Santiago, and of the Virgin Mary be with you through all of your nights and days. Amen." Having said this, she returned to her normal manner. Hurriedly and with a bit of irritation, she took back the articles of clothing, placed them in the box, and returned the crook with the gourd to the corner of the room. Then, after teaching me the password, she asked me to leave, since my guide was waiting for me 2 kilometers outside of St. Jean-Pied-de-Port. He hates band music, she said. But even 2 kilometers away, he must have been able to hear it. The Pyrenees are an excellent echo chamber. Before I left, I asked what I should do with the car, and she said I should leave the keys with her. Someone would come to pick it up. Then, without another word, she descended the stairs and went to the kitchen to inflict more torment on the boy with the sad eyes. I opened the trunk of the car, took out my small blue knapsack with my sleeping bag tied to it, and placed the image of Our Lady of the Visitation in its most protected corner. I put the knapsack on my back and went back to give the keys to Madame Lourdes. Leave Pied de Port by following this street to the city gates at the end of the wall, she told me. And when you get to Santiago de Compostela, say a Hail Mary for me. I have walked the road so many times that now I content myself with reading in other pilgrims' eyes the excitement that I still feel. I just can't put it into practice anymore because of my age. Tell that to Santiago. And tell him also that any time now I will join him, following a different road that's more direct and less exhausting. I left the small city, passing through the wall at the Spanish gate. In the past, the city had been on the preferred route for the Roman invaders, and through that gate had also passed the armies of Charlemagne and Napoleon. I walked along, hearing the band music in the distance, and suddenly, in the ruins of a village not far from the city, I was overwhelmed by emotion, and my eyes filled with tears. There in the ruins, the full impact of the fact that I was walking the strange road to Santiago finally hit me. The view of the Pyrenees surrounding the valley, lit by the morning sun and intensified by the sound of the music, gave me the sensation that I was returning to something primitive, something that had been forgotten by most other human beings, something that I was unable to identify. But it was a strange and powerful feeling, and I decided to quicken my pace and arrive as soon as possible at the place where Madame Lourdes had said my guide would be waiting for me. Without stopping, I took off my shirt and put it in my knapsack. The straps cut into my bare shoulders a bit, but at least my old sneakers were broken in enough that they caused me no discomfort. After almost 40 minutes, at a curve in the road that circled around a gigantic rock, I came upon an old abandoned well. There, sitting on the ground, was a man of about 50. He had black hair and the look of a gypsy, and he was searching for something in his knapsack. "Hola," I said in Spanish, with the same timidity that I show whenever I meet anyone new. "You must be waiting for me. My name is Paulo." The man interrupted his search through the knapsack and looked me up and down. His gaze was cold, and he seemed not at all surprised by my arrival. I also had the vague impression that I knew him. "Yes, I was waiting for you, but I didn't know that I was going to meet you so soon. What do you want?" I was a little disconcerted. "If you want me to, I can find it for you. But you have to decide right now whether you want me to." This conversation with the stranger seemed increasingly weird to me. But since I had sworn complete obedience, I tried to respond. If he could find my sword for me, it would save an enormous amount of time, and I could return immediately to my friends and my business in Brazil. They were always on my mind. This could also be a trick, but there was no harm in giving him an answer. As I was about to say yes, I heard a voice behind me say, in heavily accented Spanish, "You don't have to climb a mountain to find out whether or not it's high." It was the password. I turned and saw a man of about 40, in khaki Bermudas and a white, sweaty t-shirt, staring at the gypsy. He was gray-haired, and his skin was darkened by the sun. In my haste, I had forgotten the most elementary rules of self-protection and had thrown myself body and soul into the arms of the first stranger I had met. "The ship is safest when it's in port, but that's not what ships were built for," I said as the correct response. Meanwhile, the man looked directly at the gypsy and the gypsy stared at the man. Both confronted each other with no sign of fear or challenge for some time. Then the gypsy left the knapsack on the ground, smiled disdainfully, and walked off in the direction of St. Jean-Pied-de-Port. "My name is Petrus," too said the new arrival as soon as the gypsy had disappeared behind the huge stone that I had circled a few minutes earlier. "Next time, be more cautious." I heard a sympathetic tone in his voice. It was different from the tone of the gypsy and of Madame Lourdes. He lifted the knapsack from the ground, and I noticed that it had the scallop shell on its back. He produced a bottle of wine, took a swallow, and offered it to me. After I had taken a drink, I asked him who the gypsy was. This is a frontier route often used by smugglers and terrorist refugees from the Spanish Basque Country, said Petrus. The police hardly ever come near here. But you're not answering me. You two looked at each other like old acquaintances. And I had the feeling that I knew him, too. That's why I was so much at ease. Petrus smiled and said that we should move along. I picked up my things and we began to walk in silence. From Petrus's smile, I knew that he was thinking the same thing I was. We had met with a devil. We walked along without talking for a while, and I could see that Madame Lourdes had been right. From almost 3 kilometers away, we could still hear the sound of the band. I wanted to ask some questions of Petrus about his life, his work, and what had brought him here. I knew, though, that we still had 700 kilometers to cover together, and that the appropriate moment would come for having all of my questions answered. But I could not get the gypsy out of my mind, and finally I broke the silence. Petrus, I think that the gypsy was the devil. Yes, he was the devil. When he confirmed this, I felt a mixture of terror and relief. But he isn't the devil that you know from the tradition. In the tradition, the devil is a spirit that is neither good nor evil. He is considered to be the guardian of most of the secrets that are accessible to human beings and to have strength and power over material things. Since he is a fallen angel, he is identified with the human race, and he is always ready to make deals and exchange favors. I asked what was the difference between the gypsy and the devil of the tradition. We are going to meet others along the road, he smiled. You will see for yourself. But just to give you an idea, try to remember your entire conversation with the gypsy. I reviewed the 2 phrases I had heard from him. He had said that he was waiting for me and had affirmed that he would seek out the sword for me. Then Petrus said that those 2 phrases fit perfectly well in the mouth of a thief who had been surprised in the act of robbing a knapsack. They were aimed at gaining time and at winning favor while he quickly figured out a means of escape. On the other hand, the 2 phrases could mean exactly what they said. Which is right? Both are true. That poor thief, while he defended himself, picked out of the air the very words that needed to be said to you. He thought that he was being intelligent, but he was really acting as the instrument of a greater power. If he had fled when I arrived, we wouldn't be having this conversation now. But he confronted me, and I read in his eyes the name of a devil that you are going to meet somewhere along the road. For Petrus, the meeting had been a favorable omen, since the devil had revealed himself so early. Meanwhile, don't worry about him because, as I have already told you, he won't be the only one. He may be the most important one, but he won't be the only one. We continued walking, passing from a desert-like area to one where small trees were scattered here and there. Once in a while Petrus broke the silence to tell me some historic fact or other about the places we were passing. I saw the house where a queen had spent the last night of her life and a small chapel encrusted with rocks, which had been the hermitage of a saintly man who the few inhabitants of the area swore could perform miracles. Miracles are very important, don't you think? Petrus said. I agreed but said that I had never witnessed a great miracle. My apprenticeship in the tradition had been much more on the intellectual plane. I believed that when I recovered my sword, then yes, I would be capable of doing the great deeds that my master did. But what my master performs are not miracles, because they don't contradict the laws of nature. What my master does is utilize these forces to... I couldn't finish the sentence because I couldn't explain how my master had been able to materialize spirits, move objects from one place to another without touching them, or, as I had witnessed more than once, create patches of blue sky on a cloudy afternoon. Maybe he does those things simply to convince you that he has the knowledge and the power, answered Petrus. Yes, maybe so, I said, without much conviction. We sat down on a stone because Petrus told me that he hated to smoke cigarettes while he was walking. According to him, the lungs absorbed much more nicotine if one smoked while walking, and the smoke nauseated him. That was why the master refused to let you have the sword, Petrus continued. Because you didn't understand why he performs his prodigious feats. Because you forgot that the path to knowledge is a path that's open to everyone, to the common people. During our journey, I'm going to teach you some exercises and some rituals that are known as the practices of Ram. All of us, at some time in our lives, have made use of at least one of them. Every one of these practices, without exception, can be discovered by anyone who is willing to seek them out, with patience and perspicacity, among the lessons that life itself teaches us. The Ram practices are so simple that people like you, who are used to making life too complicated, ascribe little value to them. But it is they that make people capable of achieving anything, absolutely anything, that they desire. Jesus glorified the Father when his disciples began to perform miracles and cures. He thanked God for having kept such things secret from wise people and for revealing them to simple folk. When all is said and done, if we believe in God, we have to believe also that God is just. Petrus was absolutely right. It would be a divine injustice to allow only those people who were learned and who had the time and money to buy expensive books to have access to true knowledge. The true path to wisdom can be identified by three things, said Petrus. First, it must involve agape, and I'll tell you more about this later. Second, it has to have practical application in your life. Otherwise, wisdom becomes a useless thing and deteriorates, like a sword that is never used. And finally, it has to be a path that can be followed by anyone. Like the road you are walking now, the road to Santiago. We walked for the rest of the afternoon, and only when the sun began to disappear behind the mountains did Petrus decide to stop again. All around us, the highest peaks of the Pyrenees still shone in the last light of day. Petrus told me to clear a small area on the ground and to kneel there. The first ram practice will help you to achieve rebirth. You will have to do the exercise for 7 consecutive days, each time trying to experience in some different way your first contact with the world. You know how difficult it was for you to make the decision to drop everything and come here to walk the road to Santiago in search of a sword. But this was difficult only because you were a prisoner of the past. You had been defeated before, and you were afraid that it could happen again. You had already achieved things, and you were afraid you might lose them. But at the same time, something stronger than any of that prevailed. The desire to find your sword. So you decided to take the risk. I said that he was right, but that I still had the worries he described. That doesn't matter. The exercise, little by little, will free you from the burdens that you have created in your life. And Petrus taught me the first ram practice, the seed exercise. Do it now for the first time, he said. I lowered my head between my knees, breathed deeply, and began to relax. My body obeyed without question, perhaps because we had walked so far during the day and I was exhausted. I began to listen to the sound of the earth, muffled and harsh, and bit by bit I transformed myself into a seed. I didn't think. Everything was dark, and I was asleep at the center of the earth. Suddenly, something moved. It was a part of me, a minuscule part of me that wanted to awaken, that said that I had to leave this place because there was something else up there. I wanted to sleep, but this part insisted. I began to move my fingers, and my fingers began to move my arms, but they were neither fingers nor arms. They were a small shoot that was fighting to overcome the force of the earth and to move in the direction of that something up there. I felt my body begin to follow the movement of my arms. Each second seemed like an eternity, but the seed needed to be born. It needed to know what that something up there was. With immense difficulty, my head, then my body began to rise. Everything was too slow, and I had to fight against the force that was pushing me down toward the center of the earth where before I had been tranquil, dreaming an eternal dream. But I was winning, and finally I broke through something and was upright. The force that had been pressing down on me suddenly ceased. I had broken through the earth and was surrounded by that something up there. The something up there was the field. I sensed the heat of the sun, the hum of the mosquitoes, the sound of a river that ran in the distance. I arose slowly, with my eyes closed, and felt that at any moment I was going to become dizzy and fall to the ground. But meanwhile I continued to grow. My arms were spreading and my body stretching. There I was, being reborn, wanting to be bathed both inside and out by the immense sun that was shining and that was asking me to continue to grow more, stretch more, and embrace it with all of my branches. I was stretching my arms more and more, and the muscles throughout my body began to hurt. I felt that I was 1,000 meters tall and that I could embrace mountains. And my body was expanding until the pain in my muscles became so intense that I couldn't bear it, and I screamed. The seed exercise. Kneel on the ground. Then seat yourself on your heels and bend forward so that your head touches your knees. Stretch your arms behind you. You are now in a fetal position. Relax, releasing all of your tensions. Breathe calmly and deeply. Little by little you will perceive that you are a tiny seed, cradled in the comfort of the earth. Everything around you is warm and delicious. You are in a deep, restful sleep. Suddenly, a finger moves. The shoot no longer wants to be a seed. It wants to grow. Slowly you begin to move your arms, and then your body will begin to rise, straightening up until you are seated on your heels. Now you begin to lift your body up, and slowly you become erect, still kneeling on the ground. The moment has come to break completely through the earth. You begin to rise slowly, placing one foot on the ground, then the other, fighting against the disequilibrium just as a shoot battles to make its own space, until finally you are standing. Imagine the area about you, the sun, the water, the wind, and the birds. Now you are a shoot that is beginning to grow. Slowly raise your arms toward the sky. Then stretch yourself more and more, as if you want to grasp the enormous sun that shines above you, giving you strength and attracting you. Your body begins to become more and more rigid, all of your muscles strain, and you feel yourself to be growing. You become huge. The tension increases more and more until it becomes painful, unbearable. When you can no longer stand it, scream and open your eyes. Repeat this exercise for 7 consecutive days, always at the same time. I opened my eyes, and Petrus was there in front of me, smiling and smoking a cigarette. The light of day had not yet disappeared, but I was surprised to see that the sun was not as bright as I had imagined. I asked if he wanted me to describe the sensations, and he said no. This is a very personal thing, and you should keep it to yourself. How can I judge it? The sensations are yours, not mine. Petrus said that we were going to sleep right there. We built a small fire, drank what was left of his wine, and I made some sandwiches with a foie gras that I had bought before I reached Suncheon. Petrus went to the stream that ran nearby and caught some fish, which he fried over the fire. And then we crawled into our sleeping bags. Among the greatest sensations that I have experienced in my life were those I felt on that unforgettable first night on the road to Santiago. It was cold, despite its being summer, but I could still taste the warmth of the wine that Petrus had brought. I looked up at the sky. The Milky Way spread. Across it, reflecting the immensity of the road we would have to travel. This immensity of the road we would have to travel. This immensity made me very anxious. It created a terrible fear that I would not be able to succeed, that I was too small for this task. Yet today I had been a seed and had been reborn. I had discovered that although the earth and my sleep were full of comfort, the life up there was much more beautiful, and I could always be reborn, as many times as I wanted, until my arms were long enough to embrace the earth from which I had come. The Creator and the created. For 7 days we continued walking through the Pyrenees, climbing and descending the mountains, and each evening, as the rays of the sun reflected from the tallest peaks, Petrus had me perform the seed exercise. On the 3rd day of our trek, we passed a cement marker, painted yellow, indicating that we had crossed the frontier. From then on we would be walking through Spain. Little by little, Petrus began to reveal some things about his private life. I learned that he was Italian and that he worked in industrial design. 1. I asked him whether he was worried about the many things he had been forced to abandon in order to guide a pilgrim in search of his sword. "Let me explain something to you," he answered. "I am not guiding you to your sword. It is your job solely and exclusively to find it. I am here to lead you along the road to Santiago and to teach you the ram practices. How you apply this to your search for your sword is your problem. But you didn't answer my question. When you travel, you experience, in a very practical way, the act of rebirth. You confront completely new situations. The day passes more slowly, and on most journeys you don't even understand the language the people speak. So you are like a child just out of the womb. You begin to attach much more importance to the things around you because your survival depends upon them. You begin to be more accessible to others because they may be able to help you in difficult situations. And you accept any small favor from the gods with great delight, as if it were an episode you would remember for the rest of your life. At the same time, since all things are new, you see only the beauty in them, and you feel happy to be alive. That's why a religious pilgrimage has always been one of the most objective ways of achieving insight. The word peccadillo, which means a small sin, comes from pecus, which means defective foot, a foot that is incapable of walking a road. The way to correct the peccadillo is always to walk forward, adapting oneself to new situations and receiving in return all of the thousands of blessings that life generously offers to those who seek them. So why would you think that I might be worried about a half-dozen projects that I left behind in order to be here with you? Petrus looked around him and I followed his eyes. On the uplands of one of the peaks, some goats were grazing. One of them, more daring than the others, stood on an outcropping of a high boulder, and I could not figure out how he had reached that spot or how he would get down. But as I was thinking this, the goat leapt and, alighting in a place I couldn't even see, rejoined his companions. Everything in our surroundings reflected an uneasy peace, the peace of a world that was still in the process of growing and being created. A world that seemed to know that, in order to grow, it had to continue moving along, always moving along. Great earthquakes and killer storms might make nature seem cruel, but I could see that these were just the vicissitudes of being on the road. Nature itself journeyed, seeking illumination. "I am very glad to be here," said Petrus, "because the work I did not finish is not important, and the work I will be able to do after I get back will be so much better." When I had read the works of Carlos Castaneda, I had wanted very much to meet the old medicine man, Don Juan. Watching Petrus look at the mountains, I felt that I was with someone very much like him. On the afternoon of the 7th day, after having passed through some pine woods, we reached the top of a mountain. There, Charlemagne had said his prayers for the first time on Spanish soil, and now an ancient monument urged in Latin that all who passed by should say a Salve Regina. We both did as the monument asked. Then Petrus had me do the seed exercise for the last time. There was a strong wind, and it was cold. I argued that it was still early. At the latest, it was only 3 in the afternoon, but he told me not to talk about it, just do exactly as he ordered. I knelt on the ground and began to perform the exercise. Everything went as usual until the moment when I extended my arms and began to imagine the sun. When I reached that point, with the gigantic sun shining there in front of me, I felt myself entering into a state of ecstasy. My memories of human life began slowly to dim, and I was no longer doing an exercise. I had become a tree. I was happy about this. The sun shone and revolved, which had never happened before. I remained there, my branches extended, my leaves trembling in the wind, not wanting ever to change my position, until something touched me, and everything went dark for a fraction of a second. I immediately opened my eyes. Petrus had slapped me across the face and was holding me by the shoulders. "Don't lose sight of your objective," he said, enraged. "Don't forget that you still have a great deal to learn before you find your sword." I sat down on the ground, shivering in the cold wind. "Does that always happen?" I asked. "Almost always," he said. "Mainly with people like you, who are fascinated by details and forget what they are after." Petrus took a sweater from his knapsack and put it on. I put my overshirt on, covering my "I Love New York" t-shirt. I would never have imagined that in the hottest summer of the decade, according to the newspapers, it could be so cold. The 2 shirts helped to cut the wind, but I asked Petrus if we couldn't move along more quickly so that I could warm up. The road now made for an easy descent. I thought that the extreme cold I had experienced was due to the fact that we had eaten very frugally, just fish and the fruits of the forest. 2. Petrus said that it wasn't the lack of food and explained that it was cold because we had reached the highest point in that range of mountains. We had not gone more than 500 meters when, at a curve in the road, the scene changed completely. A tremendous, rolling plain extended into the distance. And to the left, on the road down, less than 200 meters away, a beautiful little village awaited us with its chimneys smoking. I began to walk faster, but Petrus held me back. "I think that this is a good time to teach you the second ram practice," he said, sitting down on the ground and indicating that I should do the same. I was irritated, but I did as he asked. The sight of the small village with its inviting chimney smoke had really upset me. Suddenly I realized that we had been out in the woods for a week. We had seen no one and had been either sleeping on the ground or walking throughout the day. I had run out of cigarettes, so I had been smoking the horrible roller tobacco that Petrus used. Sleeping in a sleeping bag and eating unseasoned fish were things that I had loved when I was 20. But here on the road to Santiago, they were sacrifices. I waited impatiently for Petrus to finish rolling his cigarette. While I thought about the warmth of a glass of wine in the bar, I could see less than 5 minutes down the road. Petrus, bundled up in his sweater, was relaxed and looked out over the immense plain. "What do you think about this crossing of the Pyrenees?" he asked after a while. "Very nice," I answered, not wanting to prolong the conversation. It must have been nice, because it took us 6 days to go a distance we could have gone in one. I could not believe what he was saying. He pulled out the map and showed me the distance. 17 kilometers. You are so concerned about finding your sword that you forgot the most important thing. You have to get there. Looking only for Santiago, which you can't see from here in any case, you didn't see that we passed by certain places 4 or 5 times, approaching them from different angles. Now that Petrus mentioned it, I began to realize that Mount Ichishegi, the highest peak in the region, had sometimes been to my right and sometimes to my left. Although I had noticed this, I had not drawn the only possible conclusion, that we had gone back and forth many times. All I did was to follow different routes, using the paths made through the woods by the smugglers. But it was your responsibility to have seen that. This happened because the process of moving along did not exist for you. The only thing that existed was your desire to arrive at your goal. Well, what if I had noticed? We would have taken 7 days anyway because that is what the RAM practices call for. But at least you would have approached the Pyrenees in a different way. I was so surprised that I forgot about the village and the temperature. When you are moving toward an objective, said Petrus, it is very important to pay attention to the road. It is the road that teaches us the best way to get there, and the road enriches us as we walk its length. You can compare it to a sexual relationship. The caresses of foreplay determine the intensity of the orgasm. Everyone knows that. And it is the same thing when you have an objective in your life. It will turn out to be better or worse depending on the route you choose to reach it and the way you negotiate that route. That's why the second RAM practice is so important. It extracts from what we are used to seeing every day the secrets that because of our routine we never see. And then Petrus taught me the speed exercise. In the city, amid all the things we have to do every day, this exercise should be done for 20 minutes. But since we are on the strange road to Santiago, we should wait an hour before getting to the village. The speed exercise. Walk for 20 minutes at half the speed at which you normally walk. Pay attention to the details, people, and surroundings. The best time to do this is after lunch. Repeat the exercise for 7 days. The cold, about which I had already forgotten, returned, and I looked at Petrus with desperation. But he paid no attention. He got up, grabbed his knapsack, and began to walk the 200 meters to the village with an exasperating slowness. At first, I looked only in the direction of the tavern, a small, ancient, 2-story building with a wooden sign hanging above the door. We were so close that I could even read the year when the tavern had been built, 1652. We were moving, but it seemed as if we had not left our original spot. Petrus placed one foot in front of the other very slowly, and I did the same. I took my watch from my knapsack and strapped it on my wrist. It's going to be worse that way, he said, because time isn't something that always proceeds at the same pace. It is we who determine how quickly time passes. I began to look at my watch every minute and found that he was right. The more I looked at it, the more slowly the minutes passed. I decided to take his advice, and I put the watch back in my knapsack. I tried to pay more attention to the road, the plain, and the stones I stepped on, but I kept looking ahead to the tavern, and I was convinced that we hadn't moved at all. I thought about telling myself some stories, but the exercise was making me anxious, and I couldn't concentrate. When I couldn't resist any longer and took my watch out again, only 11 minutes had passed. Don't make a torture out of this exercise, because it wasn't meant to be that, said Petrus. Try to find pleasure in a speed that you're not used to. Changing the way you do routine things allows a new person to grow inside of you. But when all is said and done, you're the one who must decide how you handle it. The kindness expressed in his final phrase calmed me down a bit. If it was I who decided what I would do, then it was better to take advantage of the situation. I breathed deeply and tried not to think. I put myself into a strange state, one in which time was something distant and of no interest to me. I calmed myself more and more and began to perceive the things that surrounded me through new eyes. My imagination, which was unavailable when I was tense, began to work to my advantage. I looked at the small village there in front of me and began to create a story about it. How it had been built, the pilgrims that had passed through it, the delight in finding people and lodging after the cold wind of the Pyrenees. At one point, I sensed that there was in the village a strong, mysterious, and all-knowing presence. My imagination peopled the plain with knights and battles. I could see their swords shining in the sun and hear the cries of war. The village was no longer just a place where I could warm my soul with wine and my body with a blanket. It was a historic monument, the work of heroic people who had left everything behind to become a part of that solitary place. The world was there around me, and I realized that seldom had I paid attention to it. When I regained my everyday awareness, we were at the door of the tavern, and Petrus was inviting me to enter. "I'll buy the wine," he said, "and let's get to sleep early, because tomorrow I have to introduce you to a great sorcerer." Mine was a deep and dreamless sleep. As soon as daylight began to show itself in the 2 streets of the village of Roncesvalles, Petrus knocked on my door. We were in rooms on the top floor of the tavern, which also served as a hotel. We had some coffee and some bread with olive oil, and we left, plodding through the dense fog that had fallen over the area. I could see that Roncesvalles wasn't exactly a village, as I had thought at first. At the time of the great pilgrimages along the road, it had been the most powerful monastery in the region, with direct influence over the territory that extended all the way to the Navarra border. And it still retained some of its original character. Its few buildings had been part of a religious brotherhood. The only construction that had any lay characteristics was the tavern where we had stayed. We walked through the fog to the collegiate church. Inside, garbed in white, several monks were saying the first morning mass in unison. I couldn't understand a word they were saying, since the mass was being celebrated in Basque. Petrus sat in one of the pews to the side and indicated that I should join him. The church was enormous and filled with art objects of incalculable value. Petrus explained to me in a whisper that it had been built through donations from the kings and queens of Portugal, Spain, France, and Germany, on a site selected by the Emperor Charlemagne. On the high altar, the Virgin of Roncesvalles, sculpted in massive silver with a face of precious stone, held in her hands a branch of flowers made of jewels. The smell of incense, the Gothic construction, and the chanting monks in white began to induce in me a state similar to the trances I had experienced during the rituals of the tradition. "And the sorcerer?" I asked, remembering what he had said on the previous afternoon. Petrus indicated with a nod of his head a monk who was middle-aged, thin, and bespectacled, sitting with the other brothers on the narrow benches beside the high altar. A sorcerer and at the same time a monk. I was eager for the mass to be over, but as Petrus had said to me the day before, it is we who determine the pace of time. My anxiety caused the religious ceremony to last for more than an hour. When the mass was over, Petrus left me alone in the pew and went out through the door that the monks had used as an exit. I remained there for a while, gazing about the church and feeling that I should offer some kind of prayer, but I wasn't able to concentrate. The images appeared to be in the distance, locked in a past that would never return, like the golden age of the road to Santiago. Petrus appeared in the doorway and, without a word, signaled that I should follow him. We came to an inside garden of the monastery, surrounded by a stone veranda. At the center of the garden there was a fountain, and seated at its edge, waiting for us, was the bespectacled monk. "Father Jordi, this is the pilgrim," said Petrus, introducing me. The monk held out his hand, and I shook it. No one said anything else. I was waiting for something to happen, but I heard only the crowing of roosters in the distance and the cries of the hawks taking off for their daily hunt. The monk looked at me expressionlessly, in a way that reminded me of Madame Lourdes' manner after I had spoken the ancient word. Finally, after a long and uncomfortable silence, Father Jordi spoke. "It looks to me like you rose through the levels of the tradition a bit early, my friend." I answered that I was 38 and had been quite successful in all of the trials. 3. "Except for one, the last and most important," he said, continuing to look at me without expression. "And without that one, nothing you have learned has any significance. That is why I am walking the road to Santiago, which guarantees nothing. Come with me." Petrus stayed in the garden and I followed Father Jordi. We crossed the cloisters, passed the place where a king was buried, Sancho the Strong, and went to a small chapel set among the group of main buildings that made up the monastery of Roncesvalles. There was almost nothing inside. Only a table, a book, and a sword that wasn't mine. Father Jordi sat at the table, leaving me standing. He took some herbs and lit them, filling the place with their perfume. More and more, the situation reminded me of my encounter with Madame Lourdes. "First, I want to tell you something," said Father Jordi. "The Jacobean route is only one of 4 roads. It is the road of the spades, and it may give you power, but that is not enough." "What are the other 3?" You know at least two others, the road to Jerusalem, which is the road of the hearts or of the Grail, and which endows you with the ability to perform miracles, and the road to Rome, which is the road of the clubs. It allows you to communicate with other worlds. So what's missing is the road of the diamonds to complete the 4 suits of the deck, I joked. And the father laughed. Exactly. That's the secret road. If you take it someday, you won't be helped by anybody. For now, let us leave that one aside. Where are your scallop shells? I opened my knapsack and took out the shells on which stood the image of Our Lady of the Visitation. He put the figure on the table. He held his hands over it and began to concentrate. He told me to do the same. The perfume in the air was growing stronger. Both the monk and I had our eyes open, and suddenly I could sense that the same phenomenon was occurring as had taken place at Acacia. The shells glowed with a light that did not illuminate. The brightness grew and grew, and I heard a mysterious voice, emanating from Father Geordie's throat, saying, "Wherever your treasure is, there will be your heart." It was a phrase from the Bible, but the voice continued, "And wherever your heart is, there will be the cradle of the second coming of Christ." Like these shells, the pilgrim is only an outer layer. When that layer, which is a stratum of life, is broken, life appears, and that life is comprised of a gape. He drew back his hands, and the shells lost their glow. Then he wrote my name in the book that was on the table. Along the road to Santiago, I saw only 3 books where my name was written. Madame Lourdes, Father Geordie's, and the Book of Power, where later I was to write my own name. "That's all," he said. "You can go with the blessing of the Virgin of Roncesvalles and of Santiago of the Sword. The Jacobean route is marked with yellow pointers, painted all the way across Spain," said the monk, as we returned to the place where Petrus was waiting. "If you should lose your way at any time, look for the markers on trees, on stones, and on traffic signs, and you will be able to find a safe place. I have a good guide, but try to depend mainly on yourself, so that you aren't coming and going for 6 days in the Pyrenees." So the monk already knew the story. We found Petrus and then said goodbye. As we left Roncesvalles that morning, the fog had disappeared completely. A straight, flat road extended in front of us, and I began to see the yellow markers Father Geordie had mentioned. The knapsack was a bit heavier because I had bought a bottle of wine at the tavern, despite the fact that Petrus had told me that it was unnecessary. After Roncesvalles, hundreds of small villages dotted the route, and I was to sleep outdoors very seldom. Petrus, Father Geordie spoke about the second coming of Christ as if it were something that were happening now. "It is always happening. That is the secret of your sword. And you told me that I was going to meet with a sorcerer, but I met with a monk. What does magic have to do with the Catholic Church?" Petrus said just one word: "Everything. Cruelty. Right there. That's the exact spot where love was murdered," said the old man, pointing to a small church built into the rocks. We had walked for 5 days in a row, stopping only to eat and sleep. Petrus continued to be guarded about his private life but asked many questions about Brazil and about my work. He said that he really liked my country, because the image he knew best was that of Christ the Redeemer on Corcovado, standing open-armed rather than suffering on the cross. He wanted to know everything, and he especially wanted to know if the women were as pretty as the ones here in Spain. The heat of the day was almost unbearable, and in all of the bars and villages where we stopped, the people complained about the drought. Because of the heat, we adopted the Spanish custom of the siesta and rested between 2 and 4 in the afternoon when the sun was at its hottest. That afternoon, as we sat in an olive grove, the old man had come up to us and offered us a taste of wine. In spite of the heat, the habit of drinking wine had been part of life in that region for centuries. "What do you mean, love was murdered there?" I asked, since the old man seemed to want to strike up a conversation. "Many centuries ago, a princess who was walking the road to Santiago, Felicia of Aquitaine, decided on her way back from Compostela to give up everything and live here. She was love itself, because she divided all of her wealth among the poor people of the region and began to care for the sick." Petrus had lit one of his horrible rolled cigarettes, but despite his air of indifference, I could see that he was listening carefully to the old man's story. Her brother, Duke Guillermo, was sent by their father to bring her home, but Felicia refused to go. In desperation, the Duke fatally stabbed her there in that small church that you can see in the distance. She had built it with her own hands in order to care for the poor and offer praise to God. When he came to his senses and realized what he had done, the Duke went to Rome to ask the Pope's forgiveness. As penitence, the Pope ordered him to walk to Compostela. Then a curious thing happened. On his way back, when he arrived here, he had the same impulse as his sister, and he stayed on, living in that little church that his sister had built, caring for the poor until the last days of his long life. That's the law of retribution at work, Petrus laughed. The old man did not understand, but I knew what Petrus was saying. His concept of the law of retribution was similar to that of karma, or of the concept that as one sows, so shall they reap. As we had been walking, we had gotten involved in some long theological discussions about the relationship between God and humanity. I had argued that, in the tradition, there was always an involvement with God, but that it was a complex one. The path to God, for me, was quite different from the one we were following on the road to Santiago, with its priests who were sorcerers, its gypsies who were devils, and its saints who performed miracles. All of these things seemed to me to be primitive and too much connected with Christianity. They lacked the fascination, the elegance, and the ecstasy that the rituals of the tradition evoked in me. Petrus, on the other hand, argued that the guiding concept along the road to Santiago was its simplicity, that the road was one along which any person could walk, that its significance could be understood by even the least sophisticated person, and that, in fact, only such a road as that could lead to God. So Petrus thought my relationship to God was based too much on concept, on intellect, and on reasoning. I felt that his was too simplistic and intuitive. You believe that God exists, and so do I, Petrus had said at one point. So God exists for both of us. But if someone doesn't believe in him, that doesn't mean God ceases to exist. Nor does it mean that the non-believer is wrong. Does that mean that the existence of God depends on a person's desire and power? I had a friend once who was drunk all the time but who said 3 Hail Marys every night. His mother had conditioned him to do so ever since he was a child. Even when he came home helplessly drunk, and even though he did not believe in God, my friend always said his 3 Hail Marys. After he died, I was at a ritual of the tradition, and I asked the spirit of the ancients where my friend was. The spirit answered that he was fine and that he was surrounded by light. Without ever having had the faith during his life, the 3 prayers he had said ritualistically every day had brought him salvation. God was manifest in the caves and in the thunderstorms of prehistory. After people began to see God's hand in the caves and thunderstorms, they began to see him in the animals and in special places in the forest. During certain difficult times, God existed only in the catacombs of the great cities. But through all of time, he never ceased to live in the human heart in the form of love. In recent times, some thought that God was merely a concept, subject to scientific proof. But at this point, history has been reversed, or rather is starting all over again. Faith and love have resumed their importance. When Father Jordi cited that quotation from Jesus, saying that wherever your treasure is, there also would your heart be, he was referring to the importance of love and good works. Wherever it is that you want to see the face of God, there you will see it. And if you don't want to see it, that doesn't matter so long as you are performing good works. When Felicia of Aquitaine built her small church and began to help the poor, she forgot about the God of the Vatican. She became God's manifestation by becoming wiser and by living a simpler life, in other words, through love. It is in that respect that the old man was absolutely right in saying that love had been murdered. Now Petrus said, the law of retribution was operating when Felicia's brother felt forced to continue the good works he had interrupted. Anything is permissible but the interruption of a manifestation of love. When that happens, whoever tried to destroy it is responsible for its recreation. I explained that in my country, the law of return said that people's deformities and diseases were punishments for mistakes committed in previous incarnations. Nonsense, said Petrus. God is not vengeance. God is love. His only form of punishment is to make someone who interrupts a work of love continue it. The old man excused himself, saying that it was late and that he had to get back to work. Petrus thought it was a good time for us to get up, too, and get back on the road. Let's forget all of our discussion about God, he said, as we made our way through the olive trees. God is in everything around us. He has to be felt and lived. And here I am trying to transform him into a problem in logic so that you can understand him. Keep doing the exercise of walking slowly, and you will learn more and more about his presence. 2 days later, we had to climb a mountain called the Peak of Forgiveness. The climb took several hours, and at the top, I was shocked to find a group of tourists sunbathing and drinking beer. Their car radios blasted music at top volume. They had driven up a nearby road to get to the top of the mountain. "That's the way it is," said Petrus. "Did you expect that you were going to find one of El Cid's warriors up here, watching for the next Moorish attack?" As we descended, I performed the speed exercise for the last time. Before us was another immense plain with sparse vegetation burned by the drought. It was bordered by blue mountains. There were almost no trees, only the rocky ground and some cactus. At the end of the exercise, Petrus asked me about my work, and it was only then that I realized that I hadn't thought about it for some time. My worries about business and about the things I had left undone had practically disappeared. Now I thought of these things only at night, and even then I didn't give them much importance. I was happy to be there, walking the road to Santiago. I told Petrus how I was feeling, and he joked, "Any time now you are going to do the same thing as Felicia of Aquitaine." Then he stopped and asked me to put my knapsack on the ground. "Look around you and choose some point to fixate on," he said. I chose the cross on a church that I could see in the distance. "Keep your eyes fixed on that point, and try to concentrate only on what I am going to tell you. Even if you feel something different, don't become distracted. Do as I am telling you." I stood there, relaxed, with my eyes fixed on the cross, as Petrus took a position behind me and pressed a finger into the base of my neck. "The road you are traveling is the road of power, and only the exercises having to do with power will be taught to you. The journey, which prior to this was torture because all you wanted to do was get there, is now beginning to become a pleasure. It is the pleasure of searching and the pleasure of an adventure. You are nourishing something that's very important, your dreams. We must never stop dreaming. Dreams provide nourishment for the soul, just as a meal does for the body. Many times in our lives we see our dreams shattered and our desires frustrated, but we have to continue dreaming. If we don't, our soul dies, and agape cannot reach it. A lot of blood has been shed in those fields out there. Some of the cruelest battles of Spain's war to expel the Moors were fought on them. Who was in the right or who knew the truth does not matter. What's important is knowing that both sides were fighting the good fight. The good fight is the one we fight because our heart asks it of us. In the heroic ages, at the time of the knights in armor, this was easy. There were lands to conquer and much to do. Today, though, the world has changed a lot, and the good fight has shifted from the battlefields to the fields within ourselves. The good fight is the one that's fought in the name of our dreams. When we're young and our dreams first explode inside us with all of their force, we are very courageous, but we haven't yet learned how to fight. With great effort, we learn how to fight, but by then we no longer have the courage to go into combat. So we turn against ourselves and do battle within. We become our own worst enemy. We say that our dreams were childish, or too difficult to realize, or the result of our not having known enough about life. We kill our dreams because we are afraid to fight the good fight. The pressure of Petrus's finger on my neck became stronger. I perceived that the cross on the church had been transformed. Now its outline seemed to be that of a winged being, an angel. I blinked my eyes, and the cross became a cross again. The first symptom of the process of our killing our dreams is the lack of time, Petrus continued. The busiest people I have known in my life always have time enough to do everything. Those who do nothing are always tired and pay no attention to the little amount of work they are required to do. They complain constantly that the day is too short. The truth is, they are afraid to fight the good fight. The second symptom of the death of our dreams lies in our certainties. Because we don't want to see life as a grand adventure, we begin to think of ourselves as wise and fair and correct in asking so little of life. We look beyond the walls of our day-to-day existence, and we hear the sound of lances breaking. We smell the dust and the sweat, and we see the great defeats and the fire in the eyes of the warriors. But we never see the delight, the immense delight in the hearts of those who are engaged in the battle. For them, neither victory nor defeat is important. What's important is only that they are fighting the good fight. And finally, the third symptom of the passing of our dreams is peace. Life becomes a Sunday afternoon. We ask for nothing grand, and we cease to demand anything more than we are willing to give. In that state, we think of ourselves as being mature. We put aside the fantasies of our youth, and we seek personal and professional achievement. We are surprised when people our age say that they still want this or that out of life. But really, deep in our hearts, We know that what has happened is that we have renounced the battle for our dreams. We have refused to fight the good fight. The tower of the church kept changing. Now it appeared to be an angel with its wings spread. The more I blinked, the longer the figure remained. I wanted to speak to Petrus, but I sensed that he hadn't finished. When we renounce our dreams and find peace, he said after a while, we go through a short period of tranquility, but the dead dreams begin to rot within us and to infect our entire being. We become cruel to those around us, and then we begin to direct this cruelty against ourselves. That's when illnesses and psychoses arise. What we sought to avoid in combat, disappointment and defeat, came upon us because of our cowardice. And one day, the dead, spoiled dreams make it difficult to breathe, and we actually seek death. It's death that frees us from our certainties, from our work, and from that terrible peace of our Sunday afternoons. Now I was sure that I was really seeing an angel, and I couldn't pay attention to what Petrus was saying. He must have sensed this, because he removed his finger from my neck and stopped talking. The image of the angel remained for a few moments and then disappeared. In its place, the tower of the church returned. We were silent for a few minutes. Petrus rolled himself a cigarette and began to smoke. I took the bottle of wine from my knapsack and had a swallow. It was warm, but it was still delicious. "What did you see?" he asked me. I told him about the angel. I said that at the beginning, the image would disappear when I blinked. You, too, have to learn how to fight the good fight. You have already learned to accept the adventures and challenges that life provides, but you still want to deny anything that is extraordinary. Petrus took a small object from his knapsack and handed it to me. It was a golden pin. This was a present from my grandmother. In the order of Ram, all of the ancients have an object such as this. It's called the point of cruelty. When you saw the angel appear on the church tower, you wanted to deny it, because it wasn't something that you are used to. In your view of the world, churches are churches, and visions occur only during the ecstasy created by the rituals of the tradition. I said that my vision must have been caused by the pressure he was applying to my neck. That's right, but that doesn't change anything. The fact is that you rejected the vision. Felicia of Aquitaine must have seen something similar, and she bet her entire life on what she saw. And the result of her having done that transformed her work into a work of love. The same thing probably happened to her brother. And the same thing happens to everyone every day. We always know which is the best road to follow, but we follow only the road that we have become accustomed to. Petrus began to walk again, and I followed along. The rays of the sun made the pin in my hand glisten. The only way we can rescue our dreams is by being generous with ourselves. Any attempt to inflict self-punishment, no matter how subtle it may be, should be dealt with rigorously. In order to know when we are being cruel to ourselves, we have to transform any attempt at causing spiritual pain, such as guilt, remorse, indecision, and cowardice, into physical pain. By transforming a spiritual pain into a physical one, we can learn what harm it can cause us. And then Petrus taught me the cruelty exercise. The cruelty exercise. Every time a thought comes to mind that makes you feel bad about yourself, jealousy, self-pity, envy, hatred, and so on, do the following. Dig the nail of your index finger into the cuticle of the thumb of the same hand until it becomes quite painful. Concentrate on the pain. It is a physical reflection of the suffering you are going through spiritually. Ease the pressure only when the cruel thought has gone. Repeat this as many times as necessary until the thought has left you, even if this means digging your fingernail into your thumb over and over. Each time, it will take longer for the cruel thought to return, and eventually it will disappear altogether, so long as you do not fail to perform the exercise every time it comes to mind. In ancient times, they used a golden pin for this, he said. Nowadays, things have changed, just as the sights along the road to Santiago change. Petrus was right. Seen from down at this level, the plain appeared to be a series of mountains in front of me. Think of something cruel that you did to yourself today, and perform the exercise. I couldn't think of anything. That's the way it always is. We are only able to be kind to ourselves at the few times when we need severity. Suddenly I remembered that I had called myself an idiot for having laboriously climbed the peak of forgiveness while the tourists had driven up in their cars. I knew that this was unfair and that I had been cruel to myself. The tourists, after all, were only looking for a place to sunbathe, while I was looking for my sword. I wasn't an idiot even if I had felt like one. I dug the nail of my index finger forcefully into the cuticle of my thumb. I felt intense pain, and as I concentrated on it, the feeling of having been an idiot dissipated. I described this to Petrus, and he laughed without saying anything. That night, we stayed in a comfortable hotel in the village where the church I had focused on was located. After dinner, we decided to take a walk through the streets as an aid to digestion. Of all the ways we have found to hurt ourselves, the worst has been through love. We are always suffering because of someone who doesn't love us, or someone who has left us, or someone who won't leave us. If we are alone, it is because no one wants us. If we are married, we transform the marriage into slavery. What a terrible thing, he said angrily. We came to a square, and there was the church I had seen. It was small and lacked any architectural distinction. Its bell tower reached up toward the sky. I tried to see the angel again, but I couldn't. When the Son of God descended to earth, he brought love to us. But since people identified love only with suffering and sacrifice, they felt they had to crucify Jesus. Had they not done so, no one would have believed in the love that Jesus brought, since people were so used to suffering every day with their own problems. We sat on the curb and stared at the church. Once again, it was Petrus who broke the silence. Do you know what Barabbas means, Paulo? Bar means son, and Abba means father. He gazed at the cross on the bell tower. His eyes shone, and I sensed that he was moved by something. Perhaps by the love he had spoken so much about, but I couldn't be certain. The intentions of the divine glory were so wise, he said, his voice echoing in the empty square. When Pontius Pilate made the people choose, he actually gave them no choice at all. He presented them with one man who had been whipped and was falling apart, and he presented them with another man who held his head high, Barabbas the revolutionary. God knew that the people would put the weaker one to death so that he could prove his love. He concluded, and regardless of which choice they made, it was the Son of God who was going to be crucified, the messenger. And here all roads to Santiago become one. It was early in the morning when we reached Puente de la Reina, where the name of the village was etched into the base of a statue of a pilgrim in medieval garb. Three-cornered hat, cape, scallop shells, and in his hand a shepherd's crook with a gourd, a memorial to the epic journey, now almost forgotten, that Petrus and I were reliving. We had spent the previous night at one of the many monasteries along the road. The brother of the gate who had greeted us had warned us that we were not to speak a word within the walls of the abbey. A young monk had led each of us to an alcove, furnished only with the bare necessities: a hard bed, old but clean sheets, a pitcher of water, and a basin for personal hygiene. There was no plumbing or hot water, and the schedule for meals was posted behind the door. At the time indicated, we had come down to the dining hall. Because of the vow of silence, the monks communicated only with their glances, and I had the impression that their eyes gleamed with more intensity than those of other people. The supper was served early at narrow tables where we sat with the monks in their brown habits. From his seat, Petrus had given me a signal, and I had understood perfectly what he meant. He was dying to light a cigarette, but it looked like he was going to have to go through the entire night without one. The same was true for me, and I dug a nail into the cuticle of my thumb, which was already like raw meat. The moment was too beautiful for me to commit any kind of cruelty toward myself. The meal was served: vegetable soup, bread, fish, and wine. Everyone prayed, and we recited the invocation with them. Afterward, as we ate, a monk read from an epistle of St. Paul. But God hath chosen the foolish things of the world to put to shame the wise, and God hath chosen the weak things of the world to put to shame the things which are mighty. Read the monk in a thin, tuneless voice. We are fools for Christ's sake. We are made as the filth of the world, and are the offscouring of all things unto this day. But the kingdom of God is not in word but in power. The admonitions of Paul to the Corinthians echoed off the bare walls of the dining hall throughout the meal. As we entered Puente de la Reina, we had been talking about the monks of the previous night. I confessed to Petrus that I had smoked in my room, in mortal fear that someone would smell my cigarette burning. He laughed, and I could tell that he had probably done the same thing. St. John the Baptist went into the desert, but Jesus went among the sinners, and he traveled endlessly, Petrus said. That's my preference, too. In fact, aside from the time he had spent in the desert, Jesus had spent all of his life among people. Actually, his first miracle was not the saving of someone's soul nor the curing of a disease, and it wasn't an expulsion of the devil. It was the transformation of water into an excellent wine at a wedding because the wine supply of the owner of the house had run out. After Petrus said this, he suddenly stopped walking. It was so abrupt that I became alarmed and stopped, too. We were at the bridge that gave its name to the village. Petrus, though, wasn't looking at the road in front of us. His eyes were fastened on two boys who were playing with a rubber ball at the edge of the river. They were 8 or 10 years old and seemed not to have noticed us. Instead of crossing the bridge, Petrus scrambled down the bank and approached the two boys. As always, I followed him without question. The boys continued to ignore us. Petrus sat down to watch them at play until the ball fell close to where he was seated. With a quick movement, he grabbed the ball and threw it to me. I caught the ball in the air and waited to see what would happen. One of the boys, the elder of the two, approached me. My first impulse was to throw him the ball, but Petrus's behavior had been so unusual that I decided that I would try to understand what was happening. "Give me the ball, mister," said the boy. I looked at the small figure 2 meters away from me. I sensed that there was something familiar about him. It was the same feeling I had had about the gypsy. The lad asked for the ball several times, and when he got no response from me, he bent down and picked up a stone. "Give me the ball or I'll throw a stone at you," he said. Petrus and the other boy were watching me silently. The boy's aggressiveness irritated me. "Throw the stone," I answered. "If it hits me, I'll come over there and whack you one." I sensed that Petrus gave a sigh of relief. Something in the back of my mind told me that I had already lived through this scene. The boy was frightened by what I said. He let the stone fall and tried a different approach. "There's a relic here in Puente de la Reina. It used to belong to a rich pilgrim. I see by your shell and your knapsack that you are pilgrims. If you give me my ball, I'll give you the relic. It's hidden in the sand here along the river." "I want to keep the ball," I answered without much conviction. Actually, I wanted the relic. The boy seemed to be telling the truth. But maybe Petrus needed the ball for some reason and I didn't want to disappoint him. He was my guide. "Look, mister, you don't need the ball," the boy said, now with tears in his eyes. "You're strong and you've been around and you know the world. All I know is the edge of this river, and that ball is my only toy. Please give it back." The boy's words got to me, but the strangely familiar surroundings and my feeling that I had already read about or lived through the situation made me refuse again. "No, I need the ball. I'll give you enough money to buy another one, even better than this one, but this one is mine." When I said that, time seemed to stop. The surroundings began to change, even without Petrus's finger at my neck. For a fraction of a second, it seemed that we had been transported to a broad, terrifying, ashen desert. Neither Petrus nor the other boy was there, just myself and the boy in front of me. He was older and his features were kinder and friendlier. But there was a light in his eyes that frightened me. The vision didn't last more than a second. Then I was back at Puente de la Reina, where the many roads to Santiago, coming from all over Europe, became one. There in front of me, a boy was asking for his ball, with a sweet, sad look in his eye. Petrus approached me, took the ball from my hand, and gave it to the boy. "Where is the relic hidden?" he asked the boy. "What relic?" he said, as he grabbed his friend's hand, jumped away, and threw himself into the water. We climbed the bank and crossed the bridge. I began to ask questions about what had happened, and I described my vision of the desert, but Petrus changed the subject and said that we should talk about it when we had traveled further from that spot. Half an hour later, we came to a stretch of the road that still showed vestiges of Roman paving. Here was another bridge, this one in ruins, and we sat down to have the breakfast that had been given to us by the monks. Rye bread, yogurt, and goat's cheese. "Why did you want the kids' ball?" Petrus asked me. I told him that I hadn't wanted the ball, that I had acted that way because Petrus himself had behaved so strangely, as if the ball were very important to him. In fact, it allowed you to win out over your personal devil. My personal devil? This was the most ridiculous thing I had heard during the entire trip. I had spent 6 days coming and going in the Pyrenees. I had met a sorcerer priest who had performed no sorcery, and my finger was raw meat because every time I had a cruel thought about myself, from hypochondria to feelings of guilt to an inferiority complex, I had to dig my fingernail into my wounded thumb. But about one thing Petrus was right. My negative thinking had diminished considerably. Still, this story about having a personal devil was something I had never heard, and I wasn't going to swallow it easily. Today, before crossing the bridge, I had a strong feeling of the presence of someone who was trying to give us a warning. But the warning was more for you than for me. A battle is coming on very soon, and you will have to fight the good fight. When you do not know your personal devil, he usually manifests himself in the nearest person. I looked around and I saw those boys playing, and I figured that it was there that he would probably give his warning. But I was only following a hunch. I became sure that it was your personal devil when you refused to give the ball back. I repeated that I had done so because I thought it was what Petrus wanted. Why me? I never said a word. I began to feel a little dizzy. Maybe it was the food, which I was devouring voraciously after almost an hour of walking and feeling hungry. Still, I could not escape the feeling that the boy had seemed familiar. Your personal devil tried 3 classical approaches: a threat, a promise, and an attack on your weak side. Congratulations. You resisted bravely. Now I remembered that Petrus had asked the boy about the relic. At the time, I had thought that the boy's response showed that he had tried to fool me. But he must really have had a relic hidden there. A devil never makes false promises. When the boy could not remember about the relic, your personal devil had gone away. Then he added without blinking, "It is time to call him back. You are going to need him." We were sitting on the ruins of the old bridge. Petrus carefully gathered the remains of the meal and put them into the paper bag that the monks had given us. In the fields in front of us, the workers began to arrive for the day's plowing. But they were so far away that I couldn't hear what they were saying. It was rolling land, and the cultivated patches created unusual designs across the landscape. Under our feet, the watercourse, almost non-existent due to the drought, made very little noise. Before he went out into the world, Christ went into the desert to talk with his personal devil. Petrus began. He learned what he needed to know about people, but he did not let the devil dictate the rules of the game. That is how he won. Once, a poet said that no man is an island. In order to fight the good fight, we need help. We need friends, and when the friends aren't nearby, we have to turn solitude into our main weapon. We need the help of everything around us in order to take the necessary steps toward our goal. Everything has to be a personal manifestation of our will to win the good fight. If we don't understand that, then we don't recognize that we need everything and everybody, and we become arrogant warriors. And our arrogance will defeat us in the end, because we will be so sure of ourselves that we won't see the pitfalls there on the field of battle. His comments about warriors and battles reminded me again of Carlos Castaneda's Don Juan. I asked myself whether the old medicine man would have given lessons early in the morning, before his disciple had even been able to digest his breakfast. But Petrus continued, over and above the physical forces that surround us and help us, there are basically 2 spiritual forces on our side, an angel and a devil. The angel always protects us and is a divine gift. You do not have to invoke him. Your angel's face is always visible when you look at the world with eyes that are receptive. He is this river, the workers in the field, and that blue sky. This old bridge that helps us to cross the stream was built here by the hands of anonymous Roman legionnaires, and the bridge, too, is the face of your angel. Our grandparents called him the guardian angel. The devil is an angel too, but he is a free, rebellious force. In antiquity, he was represented by Mercury and by Hermes Trismegistus, the messenger of the gods. His arena is only on the material plane. He is present in the gold of the church because the gold comes from the earth, and the earth is your devil. He is present in our work and in our ways of dealing with money. When we let him loose, his tendency is to disperse himself. When we exorcise him, we lose all of the good things that he has to teach us. He knows a great deal about the world and about human beings. When we become fascinated by his power, he owns us and keeps us from fighting the good fight. So the only way to deal with our messenger is to accept him as a friend, by listening to his advice and asking for his help when necessary, but never allowing him to dictate the rules of the game. Like you did with the boy. To keep the messenger from dictating the rules of the game, it is necessary first that you know what you want and then that you know his face and his name. How can I know them? I asked. And then Petrus taught me the messenger ritual. Wait until night to perform it when it is easier, Petrus said. Today, at your first meeting, he will tell you his name. This name is secret and should never be told to anyone. not even me. Whoever knows the name of your messenger can destroy you. Petrus got up and we began to walk. Shortly, we reached the field where the farmers were working. We said Buenos dias to them and went on down the road. If I had to use a metaphor, I would say that your angel is your armor, and your messenger is your sword. Armor protects you under any set of circumstances, but a sword can fall to the ground in the midst of a battle, or it can kill a friend, or be turned against its owner. A sword can be used for almost anything, except as something to sit on, he said, laughing. We stopped in a town for lunch, and the young waiter who served us was clearly in a bad mood. He didn't answer any of our questions, he served the meal sloppily, and he even succeeded in spilling coffee on Petrus's shorts. I watched my guide go through a transformation. Furious, he went to find the owner and complained loudly about the waiter's rudeness. He wound up going to the men's room and taking off his shorts. The owner cleaned them and spread them out to dry. As we waited for the 2 o'clock sun to dry Petrus's shorts, I was thinking about everything we had talked about that morning. It was true that most of what Petrus had said about the boy by the river made sense. After all, I had had a vision of the desert and of a face. But that story about the messenger seemed a little primitive to me. For a person with any intelligence here in the 20th century, the concepts of hell, of sin, and of the devil did not make much sense. In the tradition, whose teachings I had followed for much longer than I had followed the road to Santiago, the messenger was a spirit that ruled the forces of the earth and was always a friend. He was often used in magical operations but never as an ally or counselor with regard to daily events. Petrus had led me to believe that I could use the friendship of the messenger as a means to improve my work and my dealings with the world. Beside being profane, this idea seemed to me to be childish. The messenger ritual. 1. Sit down and relax completely. Let your mind wander and your thinking flow without restraint. After a while, begin to repeat to yourself, now I am relaxed, and I am in the deepest kind of sleep. 2. When you feel that your mind is no longer concerned with anything, imagine a billow of fire to your right. Make the flames lively and brilliant. Then quietly say, I order my subconscious to show itself. I order it to open and reveal its magic secrets. Wait a bit and concentrate only on the fire. If an image appears, it will be a manifestation of your subconscious. Try to keep it alive. 3. Keeping the fire always to your right, now begin to imagine another billow of fire to your left. When the flames are lively, say the following words quietly. May the power of the Lamb, which manifests itself in everything and everyone, manifest itself in everything and everyone, manifest itself also in me when I invoke my messenger. Name of messenger will appear before me now. 4. Talk with your messenger who should appear between the two fires. Discuss your specific problems, ask for advice, and give him the necessary orders. 5. When your conversation has ended, dismiss the messenger with the following words. I thank the Lamb for the miracle I have performed. May, name of messenger, return whenever he is invoked, and when he is far away, may he help me to carry on my work. Note, on the first invocation or during the first invocations, depending on the ability of the person performing the ritual to concentrate, do not say the name of the messenger. Just say he. If the ritual is well performed, the messenger should immediately reveal his name telepathically. If not, insist until you learn his name and only then begin the conversation. The more the ritual is repeated, the stronger the presence of the messenger will be and the more rapid his actions. But I had sworn to Madame Lourdes that I would give total obedience to my guide. Once again, I had to dig my nail into my red, raw thumb. I should not have put him down, Petrus said about the waiter after we had left. I mean, after all, he didn't spill that coffee on me but on the world that he hated. He knows that there is a huge world out there that extends well beyond the borders of his imagination. And his participation in that world is limited to getting up early, going to the bakery, waiting on whoever comes by, and masturbating every night, dreaming about the women he will never get to know. It was the time of day when we usually stopped for our siesta, but Petrus had decided to keep walking. He said that it was a way of doing penance for his intolerance. And I, who had not done a thing, had to trudge along with him under the hot sun. I was thinking about the good fight and the millions of souls who, right then, were scattered all over the planet, doing things they didn't want to do. The cruelty exercise, in spite of having made my thumb raw, was helping me. It had helped me to see how my mind could betray me, pushing me into situations I wanted no part of and into feelings that were no help to me. Right then, I began to hope that Petrus was right, that a messenger really did exist and that I could talk to him about practical matters and ask him for help with my day-to-day problems. I was anxious for night to fall. Meanwhile, Petrus could not stop talking about the waiter. Finally, he wound up convincing himself that he had acted properly. Once again, he used a Christian argument to make his case. Christ forgave the adulterous woman but cursed the grower who would not give him a fig. And I am not here either, just to be a nice guy. That was it. In his view, the matter was settled. Once again, the Bible had saved him. We reached Estella at almost 9 o'clock at night. I took a bath and we went down to eat. The author of the first guide for the Jacobean route, Emeric Picard, had described Estella as a fertile place, with good bread and great wine, meat and fish. Its river, the EGA, has good, fresh, clean water. I didn't drink the river water, but as far as the menu at our restaurant was concerned, Picard's assessment was still right, even after 8 centuries. It offered braised leg of lamb, artichoke hearts, and a Rioja wine from a very good year. We sat at the table for a long time, talking about inconsequential things and enjoying the wine. But finally Petrus said that it was a good time for me to have my first contact with my messenger. We went out to look around the city. Some alleys led directly to the river, as they do in Venice, and I decided to sit down in one of them. Petrus knew that from that point on it was I who would conduct the ceremony, so he hung back. I looked at the river for a long time. Its water and its sound began to take me out of this world and to create a profound serenity in me. I closed my eyes and imagined the first billow of fire. It was not easy to imagine at first, but finally it appeared. I pronounced the ritual words, and another billow of fire appeared to my left. The space between the two billows, illuminated by the fires, was completely empty. I kept looking at that space for a while, trying not to think, so that the messenger would manifest himself. But instead of his appearing, various exotic scenes began to appear. The entrance to a pyramid, a woman dressed in pure gold, some black men dancing around a fire. The images came and went in rapid succession, and I let them flow uncontrolled. There also appeared some stretches of the road that I had traversed with Petrus. Byways, restaurants, forests, until, with no warning, the ashen desert that I had seen that morning appeared between the two fires. And there, looking at me, was the friendly man with the traitorous look in his eyes. He laughed, and I smiled in my trance. He showed me a closed bag, then opened it and looked inside, but in such a way that I could not see into it. Then a name came to my mind, Estrain. I began to envision the name and make it dance between the two fires, and the messenger gave a nod of approval. I had learned his name. It was time to end the exercise. I said the ritual words and extinguished the fires, first on the left and then on the right. I opened my eyes, and there was the river Ega in front of me. It was much less difficult than I had imagined, I said to Petrus, after I had told him about everything that had occurred between the two fires. This was your first contact, a meeting to establish mutual recognition and mutual friendship. Your conversations with the messenger will be productive if you invoke him every day and discuss your problems with him. But you have to know how to distinguish between what is real assistance and what is a trap. Keep your sword ready every time you meet with him. But I don't have my sword yet, I answered. Right, so he can't cause you much damage. But even so, don't make it easy for him. The ritual having ended, I left Petrus and went back to the hotel. In bed, I thought about the poor young waiter who had served us lunch. I felt like going back there and teaching him the messenger ritual, telling him that he could change everything if he wanted to. But it was useless to try to save the world. I hadn't even been able to save myself yet. Love, talking with your messenger doesn't mean asking questions about the world of the spirits, Petrus said the next day. The messenger performs only one function for you. He helps you with regard to the material world. And he will give you this help only if you know exactly what it is that you want. We had stopped in a town to have something to drink. Petrus had ordered a beer, and I asked for a soft drink. My fingers made abstract designs in the water on the table, and I was worried. You told me that the messenger had manifested himself in the boy because he needed to tell me something. Something urgent, he confirmed. We talked some more about messengers, angels, and devils. It was difficult for me to accept such a practical application of the mysteries of the tradition. Petrus said that we are always seeking some kind of reward. But I reminded him that Jesus had said that the rich man would not enter into the kingdom of heaven. But Jesus rewarded the man who knew how to make his master more adept. People did not believe in Jesus just because he was an outstanding orator. He had to perform miracles and reward those who followed him. "No one is going to blaspheme Jesus in my bar," said the owner, who had been listening to our conversation. "No one is blaspheming Jesus," Petrus answered. "People speak poorly of Jesus when they commit the sin of taking his name in vain, like all of you did out there in the plaza." The owner hesitated for a moment, but then he answered, "I had nothing to do with that. I was only a child at the time." "The guilty ones are always the others," Petrus mumbled. The owner went into the kitchen, and I asked Petrus what he was talking about. 50 years ago, in this 20th century of ours, a gypsy was burned at the stake out there in the plaza. He was accused of sorcery and of blaspheming the sacred host. The case was lost amid the news of the Spanish Civil War, and no one remembers it today, except the people who live here. "How do you know about it, Petrus?" "Because I have already walked the road to Santiago. We went on drinking there in the empty bar. The sun was hot, and it was our siesta time." A few minutes later, the owner reappeared, accompanied by the town priest. "Who are you people?" asked the priest. Petrus showed him the scallop shells sewn to his knapsack. For 1,200 years, pilgrims had passed along the road in front of the bar, and the tradition was that every pilgrim was respected and welcomed under any circumstance. The priest changed his tone. "How can it be that pilgrims on the road to Santiago are speaking poorly of Jesus?" he asked, in a tone that was appropriate to a catechism. Nobody here was speaking poorly of Jesus. We were speaking poorly of the crimes committed in the name of Jesus, like the gypsy that was burned at the stake there in the square. The shells on Petrus's knapsack had also changed the owner's attitude. Now he addressed us with some respect. "The curse of the gypsy is still with us today," he said, and the priest looked at him reprovingly. Petrus wanted to know how. The priest said that these were stories told by the villagers and that the church did not approve of them. But the owner of the bar went on. "Before the gypsy died, he said that the youngest child in the village was going to receive and incorporate his devils, and that when that child became old and died, the devils would pass on to another child, and so on, for all the centuries to come. The soil here is the same as the soil in the other towns around here," said the priest. "When the other towns have a drought, we do too. When it rains and there's a good harvest, we fill our barns too. Nothing has happened here with us that has not happened in the neighboring towns too. This whole story is a fantasy. Nothing has happened because we isolated the curse," said the owner. "Well, then let's see it," answered Petrus. The priest laughed and said that that was no way to talk. The owner of the bar made the sign of the cross, but neither of them moved. Petrus got the check and insisted that someone take us to the person who had inherited the curse. The priest excused himself, saying that he had been interrupted at something important and had to get back to his church, and he left before anyone could say anything. The owner of the bar looked at Petrus fearfully. "Not to worry," said my guide. "Just show us the house where the curse resides. We are going to try to rid the town of it." The owner of the bar went out into the dusty street with us. The hot sun of the afternoon beat down everywhere. We walked to the outskirts of the town, and he pointed to a house set off by itself at the side of the road. "We always send meals, clothing, everything they need," he apologized. "But not even the priest goes in there." We said goodbye to him and walked toward the house. The owner of the bar waited there, perhaps thinking that we would pass it by. But Petrus went up to the house and knocked on the door, and when I looked around, the bar owner had disappeared. A woman of about 70 came to the door. At her side was an enormous black dog, wagging his tail and apparently happy to see company. The woman asked what we wanted. She said she was busy washing clothes and had left some pots on the fire. She did not seem surprised by our visit. I figured that many pilgrims, not knowing about the curse, must have knocked on the door seeking shelter. "We are pilgrims on the road to Compostela, and we need some hot water," Petrus said. I knew that you would not refuse us. With a show of irritation, the woman opened the door. We went into a small room, clean but poorly furnished. There was a sofa with its stuffing coming out, a bureau, and a formica-top table with 2 chairs. On the bureau was an image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, some saints, and a crucifix made of mirrors. Through one of the 2 doors in the room, I could see the bedroom. The woman led Petrus through the other door into the kitchen. "I have some water boiling," she said. "Let me get you a container, and you can both get going." I was there in the living room, alone with the huge dog. He wagged his tail, docile and contented. The woman came back with an old can, filled it with water, and held it out to Petrus. "There, go with God's blessing." But Petrus did not move. He took a tea bag from his knapsack, put it in the can, and said that he would like to share the little he had with her in appreciation for her welcome. The woman, clearly upset now, brought 2 cups and sat down at the table with Petrus. I kept looking at the dog as I listened to their conversation. "They told me in the village that there was a curse on this house," Petrus commented boldly. The dog's eyes seemed to light up, as if he had understood what had been said. The old woman stood up immediately. "That's a lie. It's an old superstition. Please finish your tea, because I have lots of things to do." The dog sensed the woman's sudden mood change. He remained still but alert. But Petrus continued to do what he was doing. He slowly poured the tea into the cup, raised it to his lips, and put it down on the table without drinking a drop. "That's really hot," he said. "I think I will wait until it cools off a bit." The woman did not sit down again. She was visibly uncomfortable with us there and clearly regretted having opened the door. She noticed that I was staring fixedly at the dog and called him to her. The animal obeyed, but when he reached her side, he turned to look at me. "This is why he did it, my friend," Petrus said, looking at me. "This is why your messenger appeared yesterday in the child." Suddenly I realized that I was not just looking at the dog. As soon as I had come in, the animal had hypnotized me and had kept my eyes fastened on him. The dog was staring at me and making me do as he wanted. I began to feel weak, as if I would like to lie down and sleep on the torn couch. It was really hot outside, and I did not feel much like walking. The feelings all seemed strange to me, and I had the impression that I was falling into a trap. The dog continued to look fixedly at me, and the more he looked at me, the more tired I felt. "Let's go," said Petrus, getting up and offering me the cup of tea. "Drink a bit of tea, because the lady wants us to get going." I hesitated, but I took the cup, and the hot tea revived me. I wanted to say something, ask what the animal's name was, but I could not get my voice to work. Something inside me had been aroused, something that Petrus had not taught me but that nevertheless began to manifest itself. I felt an uncontrollable desire to say strange words, the meaning of which I didn't even know. I thought that Petrus had put something in the tea. Everything began to blur, and I heard only very faintly the woman repeat to Petrus that we had to leave. I was in a state of euphoria, and I decided to speak the strange words that were coming to my mind. All I could see in the room was the dog. When I began to say those strange words, the dog started to growl. He understood what I was saying. I became more excited and continued to speak, louder and louder. The dog rose and bared his teeth. He was no longer the docile animal I had seen on arrival, but something awful and threatening that could attack me at any moment. I knew that the words were protecting me, and I began to speak even louder, focusing all of my energies on the dog. I felt that I had a different power within me and that it could keep the animal from attacking me. From that point on, everything began to happen in slow motion. I saw the woman come toward me, shrieking and trying to push me out of the house, and I saw Petrus holding the woman back. The dog paid no attention at all to their struggle. Snarling and baring his teeth, he continued to stare at me. I was trying to understand the strange language I was speaking, but each time I stopped to think about it, my power would weaken and the dog would start coming toward me. He was growing stronger. I began to scream, giving up my attempt at understanding, and the woman began to scream, too. The dog barked and threatened me, but so long as I continued speaking, I was safe. I heard raucous laughter, but I did not know if it was really occurring or if it was in my imagination. Suddenly, a strong wind swept through the house, and the dog howled and leapt on me. I raised my arm to protect my face, shouted something, and waited to see what the impact would be. The dog had
Help a girl out, would you?
Let us go out. Let's fight. On time. And let's go.
Time to mobilize my pack.
Focusing. Enemy spotted A.
Oh my god. Oh no.
Shadows traveling.
Neutralized.
Hawk out! Blinded. Hawk out! Blinded. Time to hunt.
Good job, rotate, no?
They're concussed.
Go B, go C, C.
Last player standing. Spike down, attacker spawn. One enemy
Stand
remaining.
aside. Got the spike.
Is it?
30 seconds left.
Spike planted.
Clutch.
Nice one.
Yen. Now that was a fight.
One bullet per enemy. That should be enough, yes?
Help a girl out, would ya? Cheers, mate. Don't give them ground.
That's not ready.
Time to hunt.
Show me a target. My ult is ready.
Here. Reloading.
Spike planted.
Teleport's ready. I'm a good shot.
Hawk out. Blinded.
The hunt begins.
Who else?
Last player standing.
Heaven.
Just the time. Shoot.
Nice one.
Why slow?
Ah, sorry.
No problem, Enchi.
Nice, very nice.
The enemy
Uh,
only looks
chamber.
composed. Their hearts tell a different story.
I'm gonna save this time.
Over there.
Normally I play Neon. It's different. Chamber is so different.
Over there.
We win, we survive.
Focusing. Neutralized.
Cover going out.
No
Here.
distractions.
Hawk out. And blinded. Spike down.
down A.
Cutting their vision.
One enemy remaining. Last player standing.
I have
Don't.
30 seconds left.
spike planted.
Wait.
My ult is ready.
Don't worry.
When we go out there, someone dies. Carry that weight.
Help a girl out, would you?
Go Swiss. Go B. Slow B.
They are so dead.
Enemy spotted. Hawk out. Fire in the hole.
Show me a target.
Our carrier is dead.
Spike down A.
Got the spike.
Beautiful.
One enemy remaining.
You had your fun. My turn.
One enemy remaining.
Spike planted.
Cover going out. Oh, I am not cleaning this up.
They're just batteries. And I need a recharge.
Help a girl out, would ya?
Go see, please. Go see.
I will be their nightmare.
Just slow. It's free. Thank you.
Here. Focus them out.
Enemy
That's
spotted C.
Found one. There's another.
Cutting their vision.
Hawk out.
Multiple enemy C.
2 water.
Breaking them.
Spike planted.
Il me sky. Il me sky, please. Please, heal me.
Healing over here. One down.
Feeling safe.
One enemy remaining.
Pretty
Good
done
job.
here.
Their lives are so meaningless. Might as well give them to me.
Help a girl out, would you?
No prisoners.
Don't pick, don't pick.
Yeah, wait a moment.
Focusing. Enemy
Having
spotted.
their vision.
Not enough.
I've got
My
your
ult is
trail.
ready.
No distraction.
You will not kill my ally. Enough. Hawk out.
Enemy spotted A.
The hunt begins.
Teleport's gone.
Scout destroyed.
Enemy spotted A.
Spike down A. One enemy remaining.
Go.
Plant the spike.
Spike planted.
Breathe. Then commit.
Find the weak point and break it.
Show me a target. Raise.
Healing over here.
Reloading.
Stealing sight.
Time to hunt.
Sick. My ult's ready.
Go plant.
Here.
Hawk out.
You're finished.
One enemy remaining.
Here. Watching this spot. My ult's ready. No drama.
That's it. Nice job.
Good job.
Match point.
One more.
Time to mobilize my pack.
Go C, go B. Slow B.
They will cover.
Slow.
Stand aside. Seek some outs. Enemy spotted B. Got 3. My ult is ready. No distractions. Spike planted.
My eyes.
One enemy remaining.
That's it, guys.
Attackers win.
Well played. Have a nice day. Oh god, I'm enjoying, guys.
Match found.
Move or get zapped.
guys.
I wonder if they have any parts I can salvage. Implants. I need those. Reloading.
Gotta go!
Reloading.
I'm out of here.
Neon spike. Spike. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Dexter, we already played together, I guess. If I remember.
Maybe, bro.
Reloaded.
Maybe, bro.
Oh, shift.
Suppressing. One suppressed. Flash.
Going up.
Reloading.
Coming through! Go, go, go!
Flash. Smoke's down. Watch your eyes. See ya.
Go away!
Camera taken out.
Spike planted.
Hostile removed.
One enemy remaining. Flawless.
You guys are so much better than my last team.
Damn right we crushed it. Even as I was saying
Reloading.
it. When Jet says it, you know what? Forget it.
Gotta go! I'm out of here.
Let's go.
Reloading.
Knife deployed.
What?
Nice shot.
Go, go, go!
Fully smoked.
Coming through!
Stim beacon here.
I'm out of here. Found the spy. That's 3.
Spike planted.
One enemy remaining.
4 down.
Hey,
Made me care. Big miss. Gotta go.
Good job, Neo.
Thank you.
Gotta go.
Reloading.
Go, go, go.
Launching smoke.
Knife deployed.
Suppressed. Gonna take it out. Reloading.
Gotta go.
Careful now.
Gotta go.
Spike planted.
Caiu o bubá. Do bubá.
One enemy remaining.
Inside caiu.
My ult's ready. Go, go, go.
Damn, this is fun. Let's keep it going.
I'm out of here. Go, go, go. I'm out of here.
Maybe we get the spot. Reloading. Just a thought.
Let me find you again.
Wait for knife. Wait.
Smoke's
wait for
down.
Knife. Okay. Pushing B.
Here.
My eyes are down.
Gotta go.
Reloading. I have retrieved the spike. Going up. Flash. Reloading.
This way. Go, go, go. I'm out of here.
Plant the spike. Shut them down.
Back off. Ugh.
I have planted the spike. Right here.
Last player standing.
Got you. Cage triggered.
One enemy remaining.
Very nice.
Clutch.
Good job, Cypher.
Drink some water, reload your mags, and let's get back out there.
Gotta go. I'm out of here.
Clear to engage. Weapons hot. Reloading. Reloading. Come on, let's go! Launching smoke.
Coming through. Go, go, go.
That's done. Spike planted. My ult's ready. Going up.
One enemy remaining.
This damage. 120. GG.
Everyone's motor functions okay? I know humans get tired.
Right here.
Gotta go.
Okay, let's go to 8 this time.
I'm out of here.
Yeah, I'm picking B. I have it. Come to B, come to B. I have it. Next
Gotta
round,
go.
next round.
Okay, go.
Go, go, go. I'm out of here.
Fully smoked. Going up. Stim beacon down.
There. Our spike's down.
Spike down B.
Neon, you are with.
Go, go, go.
I know
Gotta go.
exactly where you are.
I got spike.
Last player
Player is
standing.
killed.
Ah.
Retrieve the
Spike down
Supply
B.
destroyed.
One enemy
Enemy
remaining.
down.
Thirty seconds left.
Ah, nice try.
Remember, stay out of the fire. Super high level tactic. Remember that, yeah?
Gotta go.
I need this. My thanks.
I'm gonna fry that bot.
Shift.
Joke's over! You're dead!
Camera taken out.
Spike carriers down.
Go, go, go.
Spike down
Got
B.
spike. Spike drop.
I got spike. I'm out of here.
Reloaded.
The mid and I'll go B. Go away. No shift, go away.
I'm out of here.
Bro, both of them mid. Both mid. Careful, Tom. Careful, Link, careful.
Go, go, go.
My ultimate's ready.
Coming through. Gotta go. Spike planted. I'm out of here.
Watch your eyes!
David, Phoenix.
One plant and one mid. Two sides.
Come on, let's go!
Phoenix.
Bunch of guys, A. Flash! No more doubts. We're ready.
Reload.
Go, go, go.
Reloading.
You know what to do.
Shift on B.
Right here.
Here.
Careful now.
Reloading.
Going up. Flash!
go back. Let's go back. No.
I'm out of here. Gotta go. Go, go, go.
Knife deployed.
Running low.
Spike planted.
Gotta go. There.
You had your fun. My turn.
Alice. Gotta go.
One enemy remaining.
I'm out of here.
Reloading. I hate visiting underground doctors.
I'm out of here.
Nice ult, by the way.
Not that I need to, of course.
Reloading.
Yeah, you can eat to be.
What did you say, bro?
Reloading.
Sorry.
I said nice ult.
Oh, thank you.
Go, go, go.
Reloading.
You have healed Neo Auto. You know that?
What?
I will find
You have healed.
Yes, I will use it.
Shutting them down. One suppressed. Fully smoked. Throwing charge. Beacon down.
Reloading.
This way. Go, go, go.
Right here.
Smart move.
Enemy spotted B.
Camera taken out.
Reloading. Volley. Gunner.
Our spike carrier is killed.
Spike down B.
I got Spike.
Reloading.
Continue.
Spike planted. Watch out.
Everyone
Get
hiding.
wrecked. Here we go.
Reloading.
Almost out.
One enemy remaining.
Almost out.
This is it.
Gotta go.
And you are just a god. Give me a moment. I need to set back up.
Need a drop.
I'm out of here. I'm out of here.
Yalla, Machina.
Thank you. Flash.
Can't use it.
Someone's B.
Got one.
Last player standing.
Found you. Wow, my eyes are down. My eyes are better than yours. Cage triggered.
That's right.
Remember, bullets hurt. Go, go, go!
Hey,
I need this. My thanks.
Of course.
watch and learn.
No one walks away. Flashbang.
Gotta go!
Holy smoke. My ultimate's ready.
Come on, let's go. Manual reset.
This way!
Enemy down.
Go, go, go!
Emergency reset required.
Taken out.
Someone's B.
Enemy spotted. B. Spike plant.
Put down. Someone is B.
Here.
Fragment. Flashbang.
Last player standing. One enemy remaining.
That's right.
Last round before the switch.
Either spend all your money or
Need a
give
drop.
it to me.
Good calls either way. Need a drop.
Need a drop.
Cypher, can you buy?
Thank you. Where to set up shop?
Joke's begins. You're
I'm
dead.
out of here.
One suppressed.
Reload.
Reload him.
Reload.
Reloading. There. There.
Got the spike. Reloaded.
Should we go right?
Go, go, go!
Reloading.
Stim beacon here.
Go, go, go!
Smoke's down.
Running low.
30 seconds left.
Enemy spotted A.
I know exactly.
Spike down A. Last
Spike's
player
down.
standing.
Plant.
No time.
Switching sides.
Stay in range of my stim beacon. We'll mow them down.
Gotta go!
Reloading.
Gotta go!
Will reveal their secrets.
P.
Multiple targets mid.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Come on,
I'm out of here.
Come back, Neil, if you can. Or
I will go for you.
Okay.
Gotta go. Gotta go.
Thirty seconds left.
Go, go, go.
They were rotating.
Almost out.
Spike planted.
Tagged. My camera is destroyed.
What?
Enemy and defender spawn.
Last
Right
player
here.
standing.
I find them. I kill them. Simple as that. Reloading.
I'm out of here. Go, go, go.
Someone go mid, someone. We need someone in mid. So they cannot...
I'm gonna go.
Okay.
I have mid.
Someone is mid. Enemy spotted mid. Here.
143 Phoenix.
Spike planted.
Mm.
Molly.
Last player standing.
Pay attention. Might learn something. Need equipment.
I'm out of here.
Stop them. This is our turn.
Take this.
I know exactly where.
Gotta go. I'm out of here.
Last player standing. Flawless.
Come on, guys. We are not going to lose this.
My advice, don't get shot.
Reloading.
Don't push, guys. Don't push. Well, just defend it. Okay,
Watch out!
Oh my god.
Spike down A.
Spike spotted A.
Someone is A.
Careful now.
Spike planted.
Rain is down.
Enemy spotted A.
Going up.
Enemy spotted
One
A.
enemy remaining.
Triple, baby. My ultimate's ready.
Is it? Very nice.
Cheeky. We good. We good.
I can't see them yet, but I can feel them getting ready.
Gotta go!
Reloading.
I'm out of here.
Okay, let's get set up.
Back up!
Joke's over. You're dead.
Bro, why?
Spike planted.
Someone is mid.
Come on, let's go.
Foolish.
Coming through!
Where is everyone?
Watch out! Go, go, go!
My ultimate is ready.
Sniper flank.
Last player standing.
They're usually distracted once I reveal them. Make sure you take advantage. Reloading. Reloading.
Save, guys. Let's see.
Let's go.
Go, go, go!
Suppressing.
I'm out of here!
B.
The hunt begins.
Careful now. Going up.
Maybe rotation, maybe. Oh my god, oh my god. Hmm.
30 seconds left.
Watch your eyes.
Last player standing. Spike planted.
Let's ruin their day.
Eh?
Enemy spotted mid. Someone's mid.
Ah, the bulldog.
I know exactly where you are.
Smoke's down.
Spike planted. Last player standing.
Deleted. Where will they go this time?
Unless specially authorized, no staff are permitted to give any statements to members of the press. For specific inquiries, please reach out to our press outreach team.
I'm out of here. Gotta go.
Launching smoke.
Gotta go.
You had your fun. My turn.
There.
Ah! Oh my god. No. No.
Last player standing.
Oh my god.
Camera
Spike
taken
planted.
out. Trick shot. My ultimate is ready.
One enemy remaining.
3 out of 5. This is no problem.
Match point.
I'll survive a dent or two. Can't say the same for you fragile humans.
Let me show you how the boss does it.
Joke's over! You're dead!
No one walks away.
Tripwire destroyed. Someone is mid.
Go, go, go.
Someone is mid.
Go, go, go.
Ult Neon, ult. Neon, ult bro, ult, Neon.
Last player standing.
ليه روح نكمك.
Attackers win.